What up, demons? It's your boy, Tom Battinger, and we're getting ready for another day of the SMITE Pro League, our day 3 of week 13. Joining me on the desk is going to be Taco. But as we had things kind of rumbling around as the Renegades got involved, we had to fill this week full of fantastic matches, and so Thursday, back to normal. We got Space Station versus Renegades starting the day off. Later on, we'll see Splice versus Knights. But Taco, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, but I can't say the same for both of these teams because Space Station and Renegades, a lot of tension already starting to build, I think, here in today's studio environment.
Right. There's a lot leaning on these matches. Mid-season invitational just to be on the horizon, and on the real nitty-gritty conversations, we're talking about Space Station being able to make it if they win out, Renegades being able to make it if things go their way. So a lot of big ifs.
And I think that this is probably a little bit more strenuous on Renegades than Space Station because Space Station, it's been about 2 weeks since we last saw them play, and that was up against Splice. It was really fresh off of those roster swaps as well. And I think that it's tough for the Renegades in this position because you can't really gauge what Space Station have been up to all this time.
That's true. Space Station has gotten a new jungler, and everybody kind of has said, well, Cyno's going to be the shot caller, but what does that mean for playstyle? How is Space Station going to go about doing it? And when you look at a team doing drastic changes like this, you ask yourself, well, who added to the team? What teams have they been on, and what playstyles have they brought? Who are they scrimming right now? Some of those questions have been answered. We obviously know where Cyno has come from and what he's been able to do. Shout out to the world champ Splice. But some of that other information is kind of, we just got to see him play.
Yeah, and I think that that's where things can get kind of tough because when teams are able to, I guess, have some downtime to really work on their prep, I think that it can be extremely difficult for teams like Renegades to have any sort of insight because Space Station have been watching Renegades play. Space Station have been seeing everything that Renegades have been doing over the past couple of weeks that they've just been able to have all that practice time.
We're talking about these teams trying to make it into the mid-season invitational. Only top 6 from the Pro League make it there. And right now, as is, that's Rival Dig Knights, Splice, United, Renegades. But you see that number 6 spot really messing around. Renegades, SK, Space Station. SK technically out of it since they only play once this week. But SSG, like we said, if they win twice, they wind up with the 4. And you can see how that all winds up, allowing them to leapfrog over the Navy Blue and find themselves in spot number 6. But as we said, that's if Space Station take not just this one, but another one. And, you know, it's not out of reach, but it's certainly a reach.
But hey, if there's ever going to be somebody to have to take that pressure on their shoulders, I'm sure looking at a former world champion is a pretty good place to start. Cyno, as the jungler now for Space Station, I think provides a lot of value for andinster in that mid lane position because, well, I don't think most people would have traditionally expected andinster to have picked up the mid lane yet again.
Sure.
I think that it might be better overall for Space Station synergy as a whole because Andy has a very deep familiarity and understanding with BaRRA and Jeff already. Aquarius is also somebody that I think he's really been able to develop some really solid synergy over time with. I mean, Andy and Aquarius at one point used to be, I think, a big catalyst spot for Space Station in some of their set wins or of the past, but it does seem like Cyno, it might be that refreshing change of pace that Space Station needed.
I agree. Cyno has been, and watching andinster, you said a couple of things there that I want to touch on. Andy moving to the mid lane, veteran move. Big boy play. You know, this is a guy just going, you know, Cyno in the jungle, is he better than me? I don't know if Andy needs to answer that question, but frankly, Cyno sure has won more recently than andinster. Andy looked good enough in the mid lane, great at some points. You know, is he going to be number 1 mid laner in my heart? Probably not, but I don't think he failed the last time he went to the mid lane. And then, of course, the biggest point that I personally have been driving home is that Cyno has been a voice. You want a vocal person in that jungle, and Cyno's absolutely been able to do that for Space Station and will continue that. So I right here just take my hat off to andinster specifically for just kind of swallowing his pride and just going, all right, I've been jungling for 6 years, give or take, but, you know, let the new blood come in, world's MVP. Maybe I'll take a sidestep for that one. I respect that because it's tough to pull somebody like Andy out of his natural position.
And I think also looking at it, though, from Andy's perspective, it might not have been as difficult of a transition to make as we might look at it from the outside. But it's not so much that even. It's just the fact that he understands the jungle role probably better than a lot of other mid laners in the SPL right now, because that was his primary role. And that's not to say that, other mid laners are incompetent by any means. It's just when you go from having already played a position, you get a better understanding of what your jungler is then looking for. And Andy can just accentuate Cyno's playstyle with his understanding of that role.
Love it. You're absolutely correct. The ability to kind of just switch around and see different sides of the same coin is certainly a good thing when Andy moves over there. Longtime part of this team, though, BaRRaCCuDDa and Jeff. That hasn't changed, and I don't think it's going to change. We got to talk a half of the sex tank this morning. Let's see what Barra's got to say before the match.
We're live here now with Space Station Gaming. BaRRaCCuDDa joining me. BaRRa, this week is a big week for Space Station, but you guys, you yourself, and I know some of the members of your team have been in this situation before where it's all on the line for multiple games in a row to try and qualify. How are you feeling about your chances?
I feel really good, especially after our splice set. I feel like we were the ones that were in control pretty much every game, and we were the ones that threw all the games away, unfortunately. So if we just clean it up, which we have been the last 2 weeks, we're feeling good.
And so when it comes into preparing for these sort of games like this today, BaRRa, and the one tomorrow, is it one game at a time, or do you have to think about the whole big picture?
Definitely one game at a time, because if we start looking for tomorrow's set and we're not focused on today, we're just going to crumble.
Next, we'll talk about anything interesting we could see today in terms of any changes in terms of picks and bans, or is it more of the same Space Station we're used to seeing?
We got some stuff. Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, cool. What do you expect the results going to be today, at least?
I would say 3-2 us. I think it's going to be a long set. I think we're going to be here for a while. But yeah, 3-2 us.
Well, there you have it. BaRRaCCuDDa letting you all know to get your drinks and use the bathroom now, because we'll be here for a very, very long time. Back to you guys on the desk.
Indu there, reminding the fans at home and the players to take a bathroom break before this one begins.
Make sure to wash your hands.
We had a pause early in the week that 100% had to do with the player using the restroom. That's besides the point. Splice going versus SSG here today, or excuse me, Renegades. And BaRRaCCuDDa, they're confident, I really think, because it's funny. BaRRa is always going to be your political kind of interview. Hey, respect to the team. We're going to try our best. We've been practicing. But I think when you get to know BaRRa and learn to read his kind of subtext, you can tell when BaRRa's like, yeah, we're gonna
He's
win.
ready to go.
I'm happy. Or when we see that BaRRa and this is the BaRRa we like to see.
And that's what I mean, though, is that it just feels like BaRRa has energy right now. He wants to play. He wants to get out there and show the Renegades what's up. More specifically, probably Funballer. And actually, a really fun conversation that we were having earlier today was discussing when was the last time that we really saw BaRRa or Funballer get into that true 1v1 OG boxing match.
Well, because Funball has been the guy that has just been going to town. He's gotten solos against pretty much all of the hunters that he's been playing against, even Arkle, even though Arkle got him first, but that's besides the point. We've seen Funball just step up and jump on you with On Her or go at you with the Chronos, and so he's been very, very aggressive, but BaRRa across the way, one of the more safe players on the planet. So that might come down to a mix and match, but I think it will depend on the supports. Is Jeff going to be there to kind of help BaRRaCCuDDa, and or is iRaffer going to really sit there and force these engagements? Because Raffer has been one of the stars. I know we look at this Renegades team and we see, Cherry of the Jungle with an eclectic gameplay style. Nika on the way up, continuing what he started to do last season. But I'll be honest, I'm sorry for those that find the support role boring. Raffer's out here making plays.
Well, I think that it's actually a really interesting fact that point that you bring up, support being boring, because I think when we watch Raffer play, it is anything but boring.
For real.
I think that it's really just his awareness at every single stage of the team fight. It feels like Raffer is always up to something. A lot of times we'll see players that can throw themselves out of positions, but no one seems to be able to do it anywhere near as well as Raffer.
Yeah, exactly. He made a name for himself on the two-time world champion Epsilon, then Energy Squad, and honestly, I remember doing analysis back then and just being like, Raffer just gets himself into trouble and then his team bails him out, and really that's what it is. Raffer's great at kind of baiting or coaxing the enemy into this feeling of safety, and then his whole team is right there the entire time. I think communication from Rafa is really important because he understands, and Rafa always seems to know where his squad is, and sometimes he pays for it on the Sylvanas walking the enemy jungle by himself looking for a red buff. Other times when he does the same damn thing, 4 players show up and kill the opposition. But either way he does it, Rafa has been really exciting to watch.
And I know that it's been a long time ever since we saw Rafa in a role different to support, but I do still personally feel like a big part of the reason why Rafa has so much success in that support role is because once upon a time ago, he used to play carries.
Yeah, he was a jungler, and I'll never forget when he made that first transition over to the support role. He was playing the Thor, he was playing the Thanatos. And the funny thing about that is the joke was, as a jungler, he was great for like 10 minutes and then fell off because he didn't farm because he was too busy helping his team. Now in the support role, that kind of makes sense. He's got another support in the jungle, though. Cheerio for a long time has had this Guardian-esque playstyle. Now on land, we're seeing a couple more carries from him. We'll see if he feels like carrying the team today. What's up, Cheerio?
Best god you've ever played. With Renegades, Cheerio in the jungle. Cheerio, you guys have had a whirlwind of games back-to-back, but it all comes down to this for you in the grand scheme of things. Big matchup against Space Station today. What are your expectations for this?
Hopefully we play clean and get the win.
And obviously with this, if you find the win, you qualify for MSI. How do you feel the season's gone for you overall in terms of performance?
Pretty awful, honestly. I felt like as soon as we would lose a game, we wouldn't be able to recover since we didn't have that much time to practice. But hopefully, we have some time for MSI if we do qualify.
Now, obviously, there's a little bit of a window of possibility for you guys that even if you do lose today, you could rely on SK Gaming to beat SSG, so you still qualify. Are you at all thinking about that when you go into this set, or is it more focused on this one set?
Think about it. Even if we lose, we're never going to look back at that game and say, oh, we deserve to make MSI. Like, we just want to win this game and get there without having to worry about tomorrow.
Now, with you guys as well, we've seen quite a few interesting picks come out. Is there anything special that we might see today that we've not seen so far?
Maybe Kuzembo jungle. That's all I'll say.
Okay, maybe a bit Kuzembo jungle. Final question before I let you go. What is the scoreline going to be for this set?
I don't know. Hopefully 3-0, but who knows?
Well, there you go. Renegades want to try and get it out 3-0. SSG have told me we're here all day. Back to you guys on the desk. We'll find out who.
Cheerio, forever the most honest competitor on the face of the planet. Love the honesty there. So how you feeling about your season? Miserable. We didn't do well. I will always give credit to Cheerio. And at the same time, if you're a fan of Renegades, you're very excited when they first joined and they were kind of toppling the best, right? And they have kind of cooled down. What are you expecting today?
Unfortunately for the Renegades, I think getting here was just the start of their real battle, and that obviously being having to play against all the SPL teams with, as Cheerio mentioned, little to no practice. So it has been rather tough when you factor in that the majority of Renegade scrims have also been partially their official matches. And that can be kind of tough because Renegades, I know that they had some chances, I think, to do a little bit of VOD review in terms of what teams they would initially be playing against. But now that they've been here and somewhat settled in, I think that that's made things even more difficult for them because they haven't necessarily had the time, I think, since they've been playing all of those matches to get in the practice that they would want against some of these more specific teams like Space Station that I think can kind of look for just the wombo combo.
Got to agree there. You know, certainly different strategies to take out against the different squads. Space Station Gaming, though, panning out some carries here. A Muzen Cobb, one. Just incredible pressure, regardless of where you push him. He's been able to be played in the mid and the long lane, not just for Renegades, who are known to be a little bit more janky, but BaRRaCCuDDa certainly has been really, really strong, to put it lightly. And then the Dodgy in the jungle. Renegades, on the other hand, banned out 2 power mages.
But Jorm instantly going to get swooped up by Space Station now that it's been left open. Renegades, though, could be looking to respond with some pressure of their own. Freya not going to skip a beat on that pickup, but I gotta say, I'm not as keen on the Chronos to follow it up immediately. Renegades, I think, already revealing a big portion of their carry DPS.
Sure, and while that might be an issue, at the same time, you're also taking away. Right now, everybody's kind of celebrating the magical ADCs. Renegades are kind of forcing SSG, if they want to go in that direction, to play Soul, the kind of redheaded stepsister of the rest of them.
To be fair, I think that this was premeditated from Renegades. Now, though, looking back at the initial 2 bans, I mean, Merlin and Hambois. Merlin, I think that that's just a safety net. You never want to have to worry about Merlin and his objective shred potential and stuff like that. But the Hambois, I think, is obviously going to be the best response you could ask for to try and deal with a Freya or a Chrono. So Renegades, knowing that they've removed such a big part of burst damage that could have been a potential shutdown there, is going to kind of prompt SSG into this Terra. I think Terra, with her ultimate, is going to be that extra piece of damage that SSG really need.
Jing Wei, I would have told you yesterday that SSG were going to pick Jing Wei for BaRRaCCuDDa, but specifically after the Freya selection, being able to dash and a banish is so incredible. Everybody talks about Freya's kill potential, because they should, but banish is absolutely a large part of what makes the Valkyrie so damn impressive. So taking that away from her, at least with respect to the carry role, is certainly something that Space Station are excited about here. But Renegades now, they've got their 2 carries, and they're certainly going to start looking at the Fafnir. This makes sense. Fafnir are going to amplify both of what they did.
Fafnir also going to make life pretty difficult, I think, for that Terra. The hammers to maybe interrupt her dashes, as well as just that coerce to maybe throw SSG off guard around objective play. They can't really, or SSG can't really afford to not have map vision be consistent throughout this game.
Frenzy has been a go-to strategy for a lot of the other teams here. I think it was maybe Polar Bear Mike that started that one, but we've seen a lot of teams kind of adjust and adapt to just grabbing Frenzy and burning down objectives. Freya, Chronos, Fafnir, even without a Frenzy, is a threat. With that Relic or active available, it's going to be even scarier, so you got to watch out for that. Bans coming through, 2 junglers banned out by both sides.
Wondering if we might see the Kumbhakarna or an Athena ban from Space Station. When dealing with... the fun part to me about this matchup, Tom, is the fact that Cherio and Cyno just have 2 completely different styles of play. Cherio is going to be your utility and setup man. I think Cyno's got a lot more of that individual carry.
I definitely agree. That said, Cherio on the Naja games can certainly be that guy. The question I pose to you is, are we at all worried about overloading on one type of damage? With the 2 magical carries and a Guardian, do we also want to see another magical damage dealer, even if it's a Guardian, in the jungle?
I don't think that it would make things any worse for Renegades. Freya and Chronos are really unique in their damage capability, in a sense that even if SSG were to try and prioritize magical defenses early on, with an Obsidian Shard, which I would expect Freya or Chronos to rush, honestly. Both can do it if they wanted to, but I just don't really think that there's enough magical DPS in the game, or defense right now in the game, that could really prevent a Freya and Chronos from escalating.
Much different than stacking 4 physical when you have access to NeilMah and breastplate, etc., etc., etc. So Renegades here with 3 magical this time as they take Erlang Shen. And I like that choice, mainly because Cyno's a monster on Mr. Shen as well. So Renegades here with the pick ban as they go Erlang for likely Cherio. We'll see if it winds up in the solo lane, but the takeaway from Cyno's a nice look.
This is kind of tough, though, for Space Station, because Renegades don't have a ton of hard crowd control, which I think is going to give Space Station a little bit of wiggle room to try and bring in the set. Somebody that we haven't seen since, I think, Scream last tried to play him.
Scream was the one that brought out Set, one of the newer characters here. We've seen a little bit more Horus, which is, both of these characters came out at the same time. Shout out to Titan Forge doing some crazy stuff. Horus was the character that's a little bit more support-oriented. Mike played him earlier in the week, and we've seen Horus be successful. Kiki also played it. I don't think it was as successful. Set, on the other hand, this is a weird character. This is a strange damage-dealing assassin in the jungle. It is very high skill cap, in my opinion. Scream looks good. There are some weird things that Set can do. The damage potential is high, but it's tough.
I think what I like the most about this set pick, though, is that it brings a solution to the Freya Chronos threat from Renegades right now. And even with Erlang Shen, I don't think that Erlang can even feel all that comfortable engaging in a 1v1 opportunity against this set. So
why is that?
Well, Set's just got really nutty 1v1 potential because of his ultimate. It just isn't really fair trying to take that man into the 1v1 when he goes berserk there. So if Set's able to kind of isolate, or if SSG are able to separate Renegades, either one of those possibilities being a possibility because of this Jormungandr, by the way, then I think Renegades could be in some trouble here.
It's tough. I definitely want to see a lot of crowd control here. The Fafnir, has the double stun if you're cute about it, but I'm with you. I'd like to see some reliable CC. Who are you thinking?
I really like Space Station's draft, but seeing that Ho Yi, I think that's just going to be Space Station trying to snowball the mid game early, or the mid lane, not the mid game.
Well, the mid lane there, going up against a Freya, what I assume to be Freya mid Chronos in the hands of Funball. We'll see if it switches. I think Freya would be the better matchup for Ho Yi there. What's your take in the mid lane?
Either one of those. If I'm Ho Yi, though, I would probably prefer Chronos over the Freya, because at least with the Ho Yi against Chronos, you can actually force out that rewind with your ultimate and not really have to threaten your own positioning to do so, because when Chronos comes back out of that rewind, he's probably going to be pretty scary to deal with.
Back at it again. Bologna here, the last pick here for Renegades. And I ask you right now, we see Double Hunter for SSG. Set is an interesting character, as I said, new, hard to play, 1v1 potential, real nice. Basic attack oriented, ability, where are we looking at for Set? Is this triple auto attack or
in
no?
between? I really think he's a hybrid of both.
I agree with that one. Space Station, Renegades, both need a win. We'll find out who gets it. What's up, casters?
Hey, what's going on with you guys as well? Finch and Hinduman here as they move into Space Station versus Renegades, a set that both of these teams really, really need to win. And in a set that you need to win, you take not only Ho Yi, I assume, in the middle lane, but you also take Set?
Yeah, it's going to be Ho Yi in the middle lane, for sure. I did speak to Space Station beforehand, and he said they might pull this out today.
Sure.
Bit surprised it's going to be this way around with the Set in the jungle too. I'm excited to see how this plays out, though, because when the set was drafted, Finch, I was kind of excited about it, because I'm like, well, Renegades doesn't have a lot of hard CC. You're really looking at the Freya Banish as the real key to victory there for Renegades and keeping Set out of the fight. But the addition of Erlang Shen and Bologna to this list as well, disarm comes into account here a little bit as well. And that disarm against double hunters can be very impactful.
Yeah, they might not have one big, Athena taunt or like Stygian Torment or something like that, but they have a bunch of little pieces that I think add up to make life really hard for Space Station. The Banish, the Stop Time, the Hammer, the stuns there, the pins, the Bologna. I mean, I think eventually it will be too much for Space Station. I was saying just in those first three picks that I at least a little bit was leaning towards them. Then when I saw the Bologna and Erlang Shen, I think Renegades did a really good job at this draft.
But I think what Taka was saying on the desk is kind of accurate. I think we're going to see Space Station look to try and play through the early game and get a snowball going.
Sure.
With this set in the early stages, remember, we're talking a lot about like how things are going to be in the team fights in the late stage with these camps of like, well, there's a lot of CC for Set to deal with maybe, or the disarms too. But in the laning phase, there's more of a window for you to get in and maybe find a kill or two that can have a knock-on effect with the rest of the game.
Well, let's talk a little bit then about Set here and what we're expecting from Cyno on this pick in the jungle. I think the reason why Taco was describing it as sort of in between is because he can be a little bit. He has great poke potential when he's able to send out those sand clones and try and find those different angles which to get that damage. But if he gets in close with the Kingslayer ultimate, I mean, good luck, man. You are dead.
Highest skill god in the game right now is Set.
I would say so.
I think he's got a lot to old school Circuit before Circuit got buffed because people were struggling with her. But I think Set is definitely one of the hardest characters in the game to play. Obviously, barring the Morrigan, but that's the exception to the rule, right?
That's right, because Morrigan has to be her and also potentially Set.
Gotta be everybody, right? Like, you gotta know every kit and like what keeps your knock-up immunity.
Yeah, she's cheating. Yeah.
But Set in the early game, I think that's where we're gonna have to try and watch through Cyno this game and see how he plays this one out. I'm more interested to keep track of how Cherio does against this in the early stages. If we can see Cherio maybe try and match pace for pace with Cyno, if Cyno goes for a gank, Cherio turns up soon after. That's what he may want to do to try and just whittle down. Or the other option is Cherio focuses on farm, Cyno looks to pressure and gank, and then they get a lead as long as they don't lose lives on those ganks.
It's just so interesting because it already can be tough on some of these melee-focused gods, these basic attack-focused junglers, to find your time, to when to move into the fight and when to actually try and make your impact. And then you factor in that someone like Set does have a good bit of mobility. He can swap with those clones and move around. It's almost like having a free blink in the kit. So there's a lot that he has available to him, and when you pick those moments, how you choose to use your cooldowns, there's so much up in the air with it.
And the big key is cooldowns of when to use them and when not
Yeah.
to, but also the enemy team recognizing when you've used those cooldowns or not.
Cheeky.
What did you say, cheeky?
Because he left with the little one
I
little back
love
arc.
it. I love it. We don't see it enough in Smite, Finch. If you're not going to be able to get a camp on cooldown from a jungle, sure, you'll lose a little bit of experience by leaving something up there, but it also delays the respawn of the camp a little bit longer.
Right.
Luckily enough, Cyno will go and check them and find one creep, but in the grand scheme of things, if somebody ignores that camp thinking, oh yeah, they stole it, I'll come back later, and then they turn up and there's only one creep there, you're like, damn, I just lose a ton of experience.
And we talk about how, you know, Renegades have the Freya, the Chronos, and that's pretty obviously good, right? And they paired it with the Fafnir to be really difficult to deal with all of that. But I mean, Space Station have a pretty good team fight in their own. We were worried that they should maybe get an AoE mage, but I mean, Hou Yi's ult can kind of fill that gap a little bit depending on how it's used, if there's some setup there. I mean, even BaRRaCCuDDa's ult, if he doesn't use it defensively, can hit multiple people. They can maybe make up some of that gap.
They can, but when you look at Renegade's composition, anyone gets a coerce on them at all, and they are making really good use
Yes,
of it.
the whole team.
On the whole squad.
Yeah.
And I'm just a little bit concerned that Renegades could run away in the later stages of the game, so that's why I'm very much focused on the early area here and see how well Space Station can start things off.
Hey, so do you have like a personal connection to Set because he is sort of like Gara and that he has a sand clones that he brings out and everything and they dash around?
No, I don't
well,
care.
you really like Gara.
Naruto's okay, but like, sure, I like a character. I'm not going to refer to it as another one. I did want to see the Kuzenbo jungle today, though.
Why would you want that?
Because someone, I think it was Cherry, was saying maybe Kuzenbo jungle. I'm like, well, this would have been a good game for Kuzenbo jungle against
this
a
comp.
Hou Yi and a Jing Wei. It's Christmas Day.
Certainly could have done well here. Kuzenbo oftentimes likes to have some fun up against those hunters. I mean, both sides relying on these basic attackers, but it's so funny, isn't it? It's that Renegade's got all of the flavor right now, that these mage ADCs are the ones that we tend to look at a lot more, whereas Space Station went straight to BaRRaCCuDDa's comfort zone with the Jing Wei. He loves this pick, even before everyone was playing her all the time, and then andinster on a physical hunter we don't see as much of anymore. It feels almost like sort of old school versus whatever the flavor is right now.
Yeah, and I think on paper that picks and bans phase, Finch, when you saw the picks and bans come through, obviously you're on first pick, but then both Chronos and Freya selected.
Yeah.
Now sometimes you can run a bit of a risk there of being light on CC or in terms of physical damage too, but Renegade's like rounding out their comp with the fact that they picked up the Fafnir, Bellona and Erlang. They added that physical and kept the flavor going with the support too. So it didn't surprise me to see the Jing Wei locked in straight after Freya Chronos, because it's like, well, I've got to deal with one of these two. I would definitely rather deal with Jing in the long run.
And you were talking to me in the picks and bans about maybe too much magical damage reliance from Renegades, but I feel like it's Space Station might be the other direction. A little bit too much physical heavy. Aqua's almost certainly going to go that bruisery style Jormungandr who does deal some good damage. You can't ignore it. But I mean, for the most part, Cyno, Andy, BaRRA, that's all physical.
Definitely, and that was the thing, like, when we was talking about that, it was after the first 3 picks.
Right.
Not any later on, because then, like we said, Erlang, Shen, and Bellona comes in, you're fine.
Yes.
But the other way, yeah, it's a little bit physical heavy. Now, being physical heavy in the grand scheme of things isn't the worst thing in the world, as long as it's not a 4-stack. I think you can definitely get away with 3-2 split in terms of physical, magical, and even if they are both Guardians, it's not too doom and gloom in terms of magical. It's just when you get that 4-1, and if it's not a big 1 magical damage dealer, you're going to have a bad time. Aquarius is right now.
Into the ultimate, though, he goes. Quite safe as the Jormungandr. Could even use these first 2 charges for damage, and then obviously the 3rd charge to disengage even keeps the buff. This can be trouble, though, for Raffer, but it looks like he did not get hit by the stunner root, and he's able to make his way out of it.
Just not enough damage at that stage to bring him down. At the same time, I don't think the Ricochet double bounce there, just that single shot from andinster. It was a nice little setup from Space Station game there, in all honesty. But I do think the chain of CC was just a little bit lackluster. I think the root and the stun connects at the same time, so they didn't really keep him pinned there as long as they would have liked to.
Unfortunately, that means, or at least if you're a Space Station fan, that means Raffer gets out of there. If you're on the side of Renegades, you love it as you 3-man split the back camps.
Sure, you're a 3-man split, but I'm more concerned it was Andy's little Ricochet there. Hopefully that was just, you know, a one-off mistake.
Oh, sure.
Because, you know, he just wanted to show the creeps who's boss by.
Well, how often do mid laners practice that particular bounce? Probably not a ton, right? all the way back there.
I probably quite a bit. If you're playing Hou Yi mid, I mean, you're going to be doing those
Well, I
camps
assume that
regularly, right?
andinster has put some work into the Hou Yi.
No, first time playing it. Ever. Period. That's what we do in the Pro League, right?
That's what these. Yeah, they're like, you know what? I bet Hou Yi could be like fun. Yeah, bring him over here.
I was interested to see where Andy actually took his build overall. It looks like it's going to be a standard Devourer's Gauntlet start here, which isn't something you always see in the mid lane for the most part. You're looking for the power spikes a little bit quicker on the mid lane hunters, just because, well, you're sharing the farm, so it's less reliable to get all those stats as easy as you want to, and it takes a little bit longer to get online. That's sometimes why you don't see some of these hunters like move in that direction, because they don't have the build options.
And a lot of the times when you pick the hunter in mid lane, you want the pressure because you're usually up against like a traditional mage. But if I'm up against the Chronos, I mean, it's just not as true as normal. Maybe he can afford to play slow.
And you're completely right. I was actually going to bring that up, and like, I actually think you're perfectly on the money with that. Is the reason he's against a Chronos. He can afford to go for this luxury of the build. Darda's in the mid lane, though, did use his beads there. So this is a really good window for Space Station to keep the aggression going. Cyno should be trying to put a target on Darda's back right now if the window presents itself.
If this is when he looks to be aggressive, they'll just defend their blue yet again as Nika continues to try and bully out this Jormungandr in the early game, but I think we're already getting to the point where he can kind of hold his own a good bit. We'll see now if he is committing truly towards building in that bruisery fashion. The Dynasty Plate Helm does signal yes to me in that regard.
Hardest thing this game I'm going to see is what Rafa can do with this Fafnir, because his job is to really bait Space Station into trying to take fights or pick him off. And then he's still a Fafnir, so he can always jump away or, you know, turn into the dragon.
And then get a second jump. Right,
and then escape again. But Funballer, a little bit far forward here.
And might be in some trouble. Cyno is going to be able to beat. That gets away from the banish. JeffHindla comes in as well, but Freya to the sky is able to reposition. There's a wall waiting. What a stun from Jeff. Just there's no one there in position to follow up, and Funballer makes it out.
Mid lane, no trade between the two mid laners overall. Dardes and andinster trading ult for ult.
That's good, though.
Good window for Andy to attempt to do that, because of the fact the beads were down and everybody was on the left-hand side. More importantly, though, I think Space Station did a very good job on the left. It didn't cost them too much all in all when you think about it. Just Cyno's beads for that gank attempt on Funballer. But Funballer held on to his beads, which I'm kind of surprised that maybe he went for in the early game, just because the Aegis might have helped him out if he does get jumped by Cyno like that again. Aegis would have bought him a little bit more time.
It's a good point. I guess Beads doesn't do a ton for you in that as compared to the Aegis, but it ends up working for him there. I mean, he is able to get away from the wall stun from JeffHindla. But I think at that point, I mean, I mean, there's no chance he dies in the back of that fight anyway. But I do want to say, I think that Andy getting the ult from Dardas is pretty big with the bead still on cooldown.
Yes.
If there's any chance he can get some pressure on him, he's a sitting duck.
But the window is closing out now as well.
It
It's
is.
only 45 seconds left on Dardas' beads before he'll get those back up. Definitely kill potential towards the mid lane. And that's kind of limited a little bit just because of the fact that Cyno did use his beads during that last little skirmish, so he'd have to be careful about his engagements there. Love the attempt from Space Station on the left-hand side, though, and that's what you're looking to see in the early game. Cyno trying to catch people who are getting a little bit too far forward, and that's why he goes over this right-hand side, too, just to keep an eye and see if Nika's going to try and turn his nose up towards his blue buff.
And I like this. We were talking about how important it was for Cyno to manage the way he's using his cooldown specifically. And I didn't mean that so much about that he should be building a bunch of CDR, but it makes sense in that regard, doesn't it? That it is much easier to manage those cooldowns and choose when to use them if they're just up more often. And he has elected to go into that Jotuns to get him that CDR early on, which does signal me that he probably wants to be aggressive.
100%. And the funny thing is like, this is the highest level of competitive play.
Yeah.
SMITE. So seeing players
Everything's
pick
on the
up
line for
set,
this team, yeah.
We're seeing people pick up set. That's another good point. People picking up set now is always like, well, this is how the highest level players play it, and you learn a lot from watching them. You know, you'll see little nuances. And sure, there'll be players out there that have got him diamond now, but the highest level of play, you'll see some differences in terms of play style and see how useful this god can really be.
That's a great ward that Renegades put aggressively into the jungle. So they could know a Space Station were looking for exactly that. They'd kind of grouped up and pushed in, and fortunately, didn't end up quite working. But I think that you're right to sort of point out that, I mean, that with so much on the line for these teams, they'd pick up this set. And think about it, there are some teams who qualified already, and they're saving stuff for mid-season invitational. They don't have to show us everything here now. Space Station and Renegades don't have that luxury, man. They gotta win these games.
I think a lot of the time, though, when people say, like, just saving it for land, sometimes we just never ends up coming out. I've seen that more often than not in the leagues when time's going on, where it's like, well, you know, they're like, oh, we've got all these strategies, and I just see the same old stuff I've seen time and time again. But if you've got it in your arsenal, it's not a bad idea to pull it out now and again just to like test the waters with it and see how it works out.
Give it a bit of a test drive, perhaps, as andinster and JeffHindla Looks like they might be looking for Cheerio here in the jungle. Erlang Shen has now used his mobility, but BaRRaCCuDDa and JeffHindla have no more ways to lock him down, so Cheerio's okay. In fact, Renegades are the ones who might be looking for a bit of a collapse, but JeffHindla stays close to the squad. He's A-okay.
This isn't a bad situation for Renegades to be in, though. We spoke about how the early game Space Station should be looking for picks time and again. Well, at the moment, Renegades haven't given anything up in the early game whatsoever. In fact, they've got a bit of a lead at the moment. But no kills dropped, and that just means that the longer this game goes, the stronger this Renegades roster will become when they actually group up as a 5-man.
It's going to be scary. I wonder if they're going to be electing to get this frenzy that's been so popular lately as andinster does defend the red buff. I mean, it makes a ton of sense with the draft they already have, and it's one we see picked up even now on auto-attack focused compositions like this one, so a very good chance they'll go for it. But it's Renegades who want to step on the gas, Gold Fury being pulled, and it's just BaRRaCCuDDa who's nearby for now, has already had to use the beads, but he got them off the objective. Now they can look for the fight.
JeffHindla trapped inside the Suns for now, but the Suns are on his own team of andinster. Backline, Cyno was in there trying to do damage, but he didn't get enough off, and now the turnaround's there for Renegades.
BaRRaCCuDDa there does make it into the airstrike ultimate. You can use it after hit by the stop time, allow you to reposition, but first blood goes down for Renegades. They forced this fight around the Gold Fury, and Space Station weren't ready. BaRRaCCuDDa does a good job repositioning, but even though it cost them Cyno's life, they did stop the Gold Fury being taken.
They did, but I don't think the danger around the Gold Fury is relieved just yet. Take into account that BaRRa, in my opinion, has one of the better secures of the Gold Fury in this game just because the airstrike is safe to do so over the top of the Gold Fury. And we've seen more steals with Jing, I feel like, than other hunters for the most part. But with all those cooldowns being used, I feel like Renegades could have committed, but Rafa's all being down probably will subside it for the time being. You did make a point about the Frenzy, though, and it's an interesting one, because I think we're in the stage now that if one team goes Frenzy, the other team has to match it.
Right.
Because otherwise you are a big deficit around the objectives that's just too much to handle. So sometimes I think supports may end up like leading the other support into the game in terms of who gets to that Relic 12 first. And you also run the risk of like, well, if I don't go Frenzy here and I'm first to level 12, and the other dude does, then they get an advantage. I think we might be seeing Frenzy end up in the Hog days.
That's right, where you feel like you almost have to get it, like an arms race type situation, because if you don't have it, the other team has such an advantage. JeffHindla gets poked out, andinster can't quite lock down Rafa, who's actually been really safe on this Fafnir so far. There's been a ton of attempts on his life, and he's done a really good job using the underhanded tactics, that leap, to reposition.
Talking about builds as well, keep an eye on Nika, got Thorns online with that Bellona. And there's nothing worse than playing Jing and knowing you've got to deal with Thorns on the enemy team. But then you've also got a Hunter in mid lane too that is going to have Thorns as Cyno will just about escape. BaRRa, though,
is in some trouble. JeffHindla's on his way, finds the stun to Funballer. That slows things down for a moment, but something has changed for the Renegades. They have suddenly started to really be aggressive into this Space Station jungle around this Gold Fury, and it's now forced out. So that says Gold Fury to me too. I agree. The Renegades pull it, and I don't see how Space Station can make it in to defend.
Not particularly. Maybe a Pyro look, but I mean, mid lane could fall down to Nika.
Dive bombs toward JeffHindla to try and be safe, but the bludgeon hits anyway. Nika finds a kill. Renegades gets the Gold Fury. Now Renegades suddenly up 2-0 and looking a lot better here in game one.
John, you mentioned it yourself. It's like all of a sudden Renegades feel confident. Well, Rafa's ultimate's back up. They got through the first 13-40 minutes of the game without losing kills to a set in the early game. This is a good situation for Renegades to be in. And now they're like, hey, we've got 2.5 items online. It's go time for us. We can start grouping up and forcing Space Station to play what we want them to play.
That's what it's looking like there to me. Renegades have acknowledged that they're at a bit of a power spike here, and they've decided to start being aggressive, and it's absolutely worked for them. Gold Fury, the first one of the game, goes down in their favor. They've got the only 2 kills, a nearly 5,000 gold lead and 5,000 experience already at the 15-minute mark, and it hasn't even been that much aggression. There's only really seen those last 2 pressure points from them, and it's already exploded this far.
Exactly, and all we saw really in the early game, the first 10 minutes, was that one Funballer was pushed up in that lane. You expect him to be as a Freya versus Jing. Cyno makes a gank attempt. That was the only real attempt we saw at a Space Station in this game in the early stages, and that's where Renegades are now like, okay, the early game is over. It's mid-game. It's our time to shine.
They've looked pretty good in this mid-game so far. I feel like there has to be a little bit more from Cyno, though, if this is going to start turning around for Space Station Gaming. So far, we've seen, like you said, that one gank attempt, and then for the most part, him trying to run away, like teleporting to his clones on the defensive side, trying to reposition. So whenever it is that he feels like he's comfortable, he's got the Ankile, that's more cooldown, helps him against these magical damage dealers. Maybe that'll give him a little bit more confidence to move in and try and find some opportunities.
Really good example on the screen for you guys at home as well. andinster in the mid lane with those Devourer's Gauntlets. We were talking a little bit earlier about how Devourer's Gauntlets can take a while. And in the duo lane, if you notice, Barry's already got that finished up, whereas Andy, 40 stacks so far. Dardes up against him though, much better position. Jeff also in trouble.
Cheerio and Dardes committing. The Frenzy absolutely was picked up and popped just now here in the middle lane, but andinster still has Dive Bomb. It allows him to reposition, but this tier 1 tower is in a whole lot of trouble. They've got Dardes here. That's all the pressure that they'll need, and this tier 1 crumbles to the ground.
Notice how Cyno was there in that fight too, and he was just waiting on the wings for an opportunity, and just one wasn't presented to himself. This is one of the issues with the likes of Set. It's very similar to Akali to an extent. Just lack of CC is what... Akali's got a little bit more CC than Cyno on a Set. But now you just have to watch and wait for a window that just never appears. Awkward.
Looks like Aqua knew that the Pyromancer was going down, but couldn't get there in time with the ult. Renegades secure that one. BaRRaCCuDDa forced to airstrike defensively yet again. Funballer proving that 2-level lead's not just for show, putting it to work here in the duo lane.
It's going to get the purple buff as a reward too. Interesting to see him to go for the Spirit of the Magus as well here.
Wow.
It's not often you see that overall on a Freya, but it can be useful. It just takes a couple of stacks to really get it going in terms of the magical penetration you're going to get.
Yeah, that is interesting. A lot of the times the Demonic Grip Telekines is often enough for these Freyas and Cronoses where they don't even go any other pen options. Sometimes Obshard comes in 6th. I'm surprised we haven't seen the Hastened either here. Freya is one of the ones who really can make good use of this item.
Agreed.
We don't see it as much on like the Souls and Chronos, but usually it's thought of as pretty core for Freya.
It's definitely leaning into the fact that they're working as a unit though, Dardes and Funballer, with the fact they're build choices.
Right.
In that respect, because him going for that spear means that he's going to be able to set up Chronos to do more damage too. So there's always a good reason to look at doing something like that. Maybe you'll drop your own personal damage, but as a team, you may do more.
That's right. I mean, they're definitely team focused so far. The Pythags, the Spear, they're trying to accelerate each other. Except for Nika. My man knows his game plan is, and that is to make sure BaRRaCCuDDa and andinster do nothing this game.
If you're a solo lane and you see 2 hunters, it's Thorns and Nemean Lion, and anything else with health is fine.
Yeah, Frostbound, it's just going to make their lives a living nightmare. Into the red buff invade, though, we go. Beach forced out early from both andinster and Cyno. JeffHindla stuck in the muck. He ends up falling. What a big rewind from Dardes. All the way back up to full, and Renegades can keep this fight going. Cyno does at least find Funballer in the back, but it's got to cost him his life. No, the knockup from Aqua interrupts the bludgeon.
It was a really good play from Aqua, but it's still not going to slow down the pressure coming out from Renegades here. 2 for 2 so far, but Andy will go down to just a basic from Dardes, who gets a double, and Aquarius with no ultimate is going to end up falling down here too, unless maybe BaRRa can help him?
Looks
or
like
a
Aqua
blink.
does have the blink that lets him reposition. Can be quite vulnerable, can the Jormungandr without the ultimate, but Aqua makes it back out of there. 3 for 2, honestly, is not as bad as that fight could have been. It looked way worse than the start, especially when Dardes got that rewind off.
You're right, but the one thing you mentioned there is the fact that Jeff goes down, he dies in the muck, so to speak, but he got his ultimate off.
Right.
And that ultimate hits so many people in that fight. Take into account, the whole time that ultimate is on them, you've got the whole team of Space Station Gaming getting a bit more protections and sustain, and Renegades are taking more damage. That kind of balances out the frenzy that was also popped by Rafa in that engagement.
That's right. That's another big difference. Is that's 2, I think, frenzy cycles that have come through for Renegades without Space Station being able to match it. That's a pretty big deal. But you also talked about it. I mean, Aqua hit that knockup and just barely kept Cyno alive for another moment. His impact in that fight was definitely big. Aqua here on this Jormungandr.
And I think there's a problem is Cyno is a single target focused sort of character. I feel like one at a time, right?
And it wasn't even that fast. It took a while.
It did take a while because the amount of peel that Renegades were also given to each other as well. Big difference, though, is experience in the mid lane, and that is like a huge warning sign. A 4-level lead in the mid lane between Dardes and andinster. It's just a bit, even if you've got the same god, a 4-level difference is huge. Then you take into account it's a Chronos versus a Ho Yi. I'm happy if I'm a Renegades fan right now.
You're feeling pretty good about their chances, I would say. I mean, even though that last fight was maybe a little closer than you would have expected, still, though, the ball's clearly in Renegades' court, and it looks like they recognize it now. They're around this Oni Fury. Dardes considering pulling it, buying his team some time to get into position. Cheerio, though, might have a bit of a flank here on Aqua and force that ult early, though it looks like he doesn't want to go for the one-on-one.
Real trap from Renegades being set up here. They've won the last couple of engagements, and they feel confident with the level lead now. They were like, hey, we'll pull the Oni Fury. You're going to have to come in and defend, and when you do, we'll take a fight. But if you're not here in time, we'll even take the Fury beforehand.
Cyno tried to loop around, but Cheerio spotted it out. They dived him and collapsed, and he never got to do anything. Nika gets the kill credit, but it's already a 5v4. Frenzy popped yet again, and JeffHindla is stuck in it yet again. There's nowhere for this Terra to go. That's 2 for Renegades.
And that's now fallback to the Oni Fury as well. I believe, I did think Cyno's relics weren't going to be available for that fight. I think the beads have just come up while he's been dead. but he was trying to flank around the side. And this was a forced fight from Renegades with the relic situation. They knew Cyno had invested the Aegis in the last little fight around the Fury and around the red buff. So they're like, well, we go back to it again. If we can find Cyno, we've got a 4v5 straight away, and that's what happened.
And just not had the impact that you want. I mean, he's close to Cheerio in terms of damage, but remember, Cheerio contributes a whole lot else in team fights other than just his damage. And he has a taunt, the knock-up, the root. I mean, Cyno, if he's not killing someone, is not contributing nearly as much to the team.
You know, now that I look back at how this game played out in the picks and bans phase as well, I have a feeling in my head that maybe Space Station kind of showed their hand in the picks and bans a little bit earlier than they should have with this set pick. We've not seen a lot of set bans, and we've not seen a whole lot of set picks overall. They could have potentially held that on a little bit longer this game. The fact that they went with the set and double Hunter, it's a very squishy composition that allowed Renegades with their last 2 picks to go Erlang, Bologna.
Right.
And then we're dealing with those well. And when you talk about Bologna right now, 2-0 on 4 for Nika, he's in a fantastic game. His Eagles rallies and some of his target selection has been very good.
He's been great, so is Cheerio. And I talked about how close they were in damage. That was without me even noticing that Cheerio is not even going to try and do damage in this game, is my thought. I mean, Toxic Blade, Wing Blade, he's building into more Fizz procs even now. I mean, he's definitely more utility style this game, and still outclassing Cyno in terms of just the raw damage output. But the Fire Giant's on the menu right now. Aqua has to go in to try and shut this one down. Fire Giant's not been fully leashed. In fact, Funballer had to Aegis just to get away.
Cyno
and Cheerio's quite low too.
Is completely under pressure by the whole team. As soon as Renegades see Cyno, they kill him and then turn back towards everybody else. Funballer gets another kill, but Aquarius will at least take down Dardes, who didn't ult there, surprisingly enough, to keep himself alive. And Cheerio may get a bit of free time with andinster, who Aegis early.
Yeah, now andinster's certainly dead to rights. He falls to make it 3-for-1 Dardes. The only thing that Renegades lose, but how nice is it when you lose one mage ADC to have a second one lying in wait? Renegades should still be able to burn through this objective, I'd imagine, if they do want to come back to it. But Space Station drop yet another fight, and it starts, like you said, with Cyno being blown up immediately.
That's all it's about. If Renegades even sniff in the general direction and sense Cyno's around that area, they will go at him until he's dead. And they won't stop either. I don't think it's even a problem for them if they lose lives there. Because the likes of Bologna and Erlang Shen, one of those 2 will still be alive, if not Fafnir. And if one of those 3 is still alive, then they're going to be able to deal with the Hunters pretty effectively in this game.
They've really mitigated what andinster and BaRRaCCuDDa have been able to do so far with this draft. And I understand, you know, why you'd want this double physical Hunter, but it's just that Renegades have built so efficiently into it and really limited their options while building as a team and making sure they just accelerate what Dardes and Funballer can do. And now Aqua's in trouble. He does not have the ultimate with which to get out of here. That's a pretty big knockup for BaRRaCCuDDa, and it might have been just enough.
Just enough range. Funballer just couldn't keep... At first, Funballer had to just take 2 steps forward, he would have got the kill, but I think in doing so, he probably would have died himself. Remember, Funballer's ultimate was on cooldown there, and his Aegis as well. Sometimes it's better to stay alive than get the kill, even though it would have definitely been a big window for Renegades.
Stun lands from Andy, but no immediate follow-up from it. They could not have hard committed onto catching out Cheerio on the Erlang Shen in that situation. So yet again, Space Station have to play it careful, but Dardes catches out Aqua with the stun. That means he must go into that World Serpent ultimate right away. Cyno has Funballer way in the back line. Finally, it's his moment, but the turnaround potential when he goes up into the Valkyrie's discretion is too strong. Funballer able to eke his way to the back line, and BaRRaCCuDDa has to use airstrike too early. Cheerio able to find JeffHindla.
Technical knockout of Cyno, and what happens? They turn their attention to everybody else. And it's the front line. The front line is just being followed up by Dardes in the background. He's doing all the damage. That's a Fire Giant now off the back of this. This fight from Space Station, this composition from them, I think the double Hunter can work, sure, but I think you're running it a little bit too deep by trying to take the set alongside it. That's where my issue really is when it breaks down in this game. And Renegades have just been able to continue this pressure, and they've not really looked too worried in this game, in my opinion. There's nothing that's scared me from a Renegades, player whatsoever. Like, well, as long as we watch out for Cyno, we're okay.
Yeah, and I think the lack of a true magic damage dealer hurts them too. I wonder if maybe even like an Ao Kuang in that same spot doesn't do a lot of the same things Set does, but maybe force Renegades to play a little bit differently. I'm not so sure. But think about, Nika and Cheerio have been able to fully itemize to stop andinster and BaRRaCCuDDa, and they don't have to worry about anything else in these fights.
And realistically, you can't really do much against the magical damage that Aquarius and Jeff are going to do. It's going to be incidental damage more than anything else.
I don't think they're worried about it at all.
Build into that's not going to help. I will say, though, you mentioned about Cheerio's build this game. Cherry's always been that role player, though.
You're exactly right.
He plays the Kumbhakernas, the Ymir jungles. Like, he is the
Athena.
setup artist more than anything else. So, no surprise to see him go for all the support tools to give his team the best chance of a victory.
As if there wasn't enough items to make Hunter's lives miserable, Mid-Guardian picked up and Aqua put down. The Jormungandr already removed, forced to leave immediately as andinster. In comes the Earth and Fury from JeffHindla, so maybe some turnaround potential for Space Station. Not if JeffHindla gets stunned. In comes the damage, and Dardes burns him down.
And the Phoenix on top of that too. Surprised me to see Renegades maybe go for an end, but instead they've been a bit more respectful here, get the tier 2 in mid. Should be another Phoenix though on the cards before they fall back to base.
I'd be surprised if they don't push for another one too. I mean, so far Space Station have shown virtually no ability to stop this team. So in the 5v3, why not? Cheerio, look where he is, catching a Funballer back by the fountain.
That's
Ludicrous.
not Funballer. It might be a Ho Yi, but it
Or
ain't a
andinster,
Funballer.
excuse me. Yeah, I say Funballer. Yeah, I don't know why. Andinster down there by the fountain, and the Miss Phoenix in some trouble.
He was having a rough year last year, but Funballer's stepping
Yeah,
up this
just
one,
used
okay?
to seeing Funballer in trouble, maybe
I know,
something like
yeah.
that. I don't know. Frenzy comes out. That should do it though. Renegades in the 5v2 burn down this Titan with no trouble at all. 16-3 in under 27 minutes.
The fans out there that would have seen the picks and bans, seen the compositions, and known exactly how that game plays out.
I thought Renegades won it so much, yeah.
Can Space Station get off to a good start in the early game? Can Renegades frustrate them and hold on to the late game? Well, overall, Space Station couldn't get anything going in the early game, and that just meant Renegades got to their late game even quicker. And back to the drawing board we go with Space Station game. Remember, Renegades just need to win this set, and they move on to
Yes.
MSI, and Space Station have to win.
That's exactly right. For Renegades, it's just that easy. Winning their in. Space Station have to win this set and then win their set up against SK tomorrow as well. So not an easy path for them at all.
I'm not worried just yet for Space Station, though.
I think this is the kind of loss you can write off. It
Well-
just definitely was a picks and bans area.
It's also because how many times have we watched teams with Jeff and BaRRaCCuDDa on be on the brink of elimination, expected to lose,
The plot armor.
and then somehow still make it to the last?
Yeah, I think the plot armor for Jeff and BaRRa is pretty strong. So I don't know, man. I don't think it's been put to the test just yet. They still have a pretty good chance to try and make it. And honestly, I picked them. I think they have a good chance to win this set. It's just that maybe not with set, right? Maybe they have to work on that comp and then the comp from Renegades a little bit more.
Definitely. I think set is very good, but I'm not sure in that composition. That's what it really came down to.
Yep, just did not quite have the room to operate, though. I'm sure the desk has some ideas of their own. Let's get it back over to Tom and Taco.
Thanks a lot, guys. Great job on the call there, and great job in the game to the Renegades. These guys had a game plan. Trust, Freya, Kronos, and Fafnir. That game plan came to fruition.
And just as you thought that it was going to be a continuous slow one or a slow builder, I mean, 11 minutes deep and no kills, and the next thing you know, Renegades are just explosive. Freya, Kronos hit their itemization spikes, and it's all kind of downhill from there for Space Station. While I initially believed that the set might be enough alongside of, andinster on the Ho Yi, BaRRa with that Jing wave, being able to build into some crit potential there. But the damage numbers just weren't lining up when Space Station needed them to. Renegades just having, I think, a little bit of an easier time utilizing this Freya Kronos because of that Fafnir.
Absolutely, and anytime you give Dardes and Funball, carries that can do this sort of thing, you're automatically in a good spot. Renegades got to feel strong about that. You were talking about set, though, and you mentioned that, just wasn't enough this time around. The jury's still out on set. Has this kind of helped you come to a conclusion about what you think about the character?
I have always believed that Set thrives in chaotic environments where he can frequently look for 1v1 backline boxing opportunities. And
Like ranked.
Like ranked, exactly. And I just think that at competitive level of play, it might be a little bit more difficult, I think, to utilize that set because he might be a little bit too individual based. And at an SPL level of play, usually the communication and synergy is going to be there to peel when necessary for carries, and that's oftentimes what we saw a lot of. Cyno would try to initiate onto Dardes, onto Funballer, would sometimes get some pretty decent damage going, but then there wasn't really enough follow-up left over after the fact because Space Station would get staggered into a pick, and
Sure.
4v5 already kind of difficult to deal with, so they would usually just be sent scattering, and in the process, Renegades would just continue to dismantle them one by one.
Well, right now, that's what they did in game number 1. Game number 2, we'll see if it's a little bit different. This is what the numbers looked like, however. Dardes 6-1 and 8, and then 4-1 and 8 from the other magical carry. And 0-0-13, that just looks great. Dardes, Raffer, Funball, that's what it's supposed to look like. And shout outs to Cheerio. This is truly what he likes to do. 2-1-13, half man, half carry man, half facilitator man, just doing a little bit of both.
Funnily enough, I think I would have to credit a huge part of the Renegades' success here in Game 1 to Nika.
Agreed.
It was frequently Nika harassing Andy or BaRRaCCuDDa. I mean, he even got a kill against Andy a couple of times there just because of forcing Andy to use that jump right away on the Ho Yi to try and create some space, and then immediately meeting up to him or catching up to him with the Eagles rally. Really nowhere left to run there. And I think something interesting that Finch mentioned actually at the end of Game 1 was it just seemed like SSG might have had some drafting errors, and even looking back now to seeing their first couple of pick ban choices, Daji, Muzen Cobb. I mean, you're in that first pick position. Do you really want to sacrifice Freya Chronos to cancel out Renegades getting Muzen Cobb and Daji in comparison? I think you're probably better off letting the Freya Chronos be the banning choices and seeing if Renegades can do something different with the Daji or AMC.
Well, game number 2 might be different. Picks and bans on the way here. And with Space Station Gaming on the first side, we'll see if they do the same strategy. Because that's honestly what I was going to ask, if you thought that this game was all because of draft. I do think there were some curious ban choices, and obviously we did see the Freya Chronos kind of succeed. But just like you said, Freya Chronos succeeded because of the prowess from Nika. A lot of space was being brought out by the solo side and the jungle. Nika and Cherio kind of provided the space and the setup so that Darda's a fun ball and the mid laner, or the carry could go ahead and provide their damage. So Space Station had some issues with the draft, but also issues on the battlefield. So what do you think was more impactful there?
I think that it was just like a collection of things. I mean, it was partially... I think some of the drafting coming back to haunt SSG here, but they were going to stick to their guns so far.
All right.
Taking out that Muzen Cobb, and Renegades will follow suit by stripping away the Habois. But if you're SSG here, I think you have to take Freya or Chronos. Renegades have already alluded to the fact that they have full intentions of probably trying to run back that Chronos Freya since Habois is off the table.
If Jormungandr gets locked in here, I think the big question of Renegades, you start scratching your head and going, are they outsmarting us, or?
I think Space Station are kind of outsmarting themselves.
Well, here's the thing, because if I'm Renegades, right, we won because we selected Freya Chronos, right? So, if my enemy does the same thing a second time, I have to sit here and go, so you have an answer, right?
Well, Renegades are already up a match, and it's now Space Station's responsibility to force Renegades to do something differently. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And for Renegades, why should they have to try and bring out a possibly new strategy for other teams to then analyze and break down for future sets and gameplay? And not only that, but Space Station, I think, are also kind of, if they don't have an answer in Game 2 to the Freya Chronos, I think it could lead to Space Station possibly getting in their own heads even.
Yeah, and looking here, I don't know if that's it. Because like I said, if I'm Space Station, right, I let Freya Chronos go through and I pick my own stuff. And the only reason I'm putting myself in that position again here in game number 2 is if I have the magic secret to fix this situation, and then they lock it in, and then surprise, here it is. Hunbats and Jing are not those selections. I think Hunbats is great against Chronos specifically, but I don't. Space Station are not filling me with this feeling of confidence for sure.
Their setup, I do like the Umbats edition over, I believe it was the Jing Terra that Space Station took as their second thirds. This time it'll be the Umbats Jing Wei to finish off those top 3. And Fear No Evil definitely is going to help.
That's a nice look.
The question is, how much can it help? How frequently can Cyno actually connect with more than one member inside of that Fear No Evil? Or maybe it could just be the one. Who knows? Maybe Aquarius is able to keep everybody on Renegades distracted with that Jormungandr. But after looking back on Game 1 and just seeing how rapidly Renegades were able to just evaporate SSG's frontline because of the Freya Chronos, I don't know. It just seems very forced right now from Space Station.
I got to agree. Seems just a little ham-fisted to go, we really need this Jormungandr. And I understand you're enabling Aquarius, but this is absolutely one where we'll have to see it really unfold on the battlefield, because I too am looking at this Chronos Freya, the Phronos, and I'm just like, I don't know about all that. What I do know about is the Naja. Cherio on this Naja has looked very, very strong. Could go to Raph for sure, but Cherio, this is one of his carries.
I think the easiest way to break down Freya Chronos and the whole debate is just every other team in the SPL right now has either banned or first picked both of these gods and have been heavily contested for weeks now.
Which doesn't necessarily, just because everybody else is doing it, doesn't mean you have to do it. In fact, that's how Space Station routinely get into trouble.
Maybe sometimes you should start listening to the rest of the class if you're constantly failing your test.
I feel that. The thing is that Space Station, I feel like, have routinely this BaRRaCCuDDa Jeff andinster machine, right? This team has repeatedly failed since season 1 because they've been followers a little too much. They don't do enough to lead the meta. Alpha Jackal kind of in their corner now as their coach and trying to help them succeed. I'm excited to see new strategies. Letting Freya and Chronos go through is technically a new strategy. I don't love it. I love to see Space Station trying it, but I don't think this is the right look.
Didn't get a chance to say it, but I was waiting for it to happen. The Athena pick as the backup plan there for Raffer. Not a half-bad backup plan either. Space Station tried to get rid of the Fafnir and the Khepri, and while those guys could have certainly introduced problems of their own, having a free beads burner on Renegades with the Athena taunt could not be better placed there for Cherio, and now that's also going to add even more pressure, I would say, to Cyno and Aquarius for trying to figure out ways to constantly displace Renegades, because Fear No Evil and even that World Worm ultimate from the Yorm is still probably not going to be as effective with Athena there to just taunt them off.
I like the ban of the Fafnir a lot. I think that is objectively the correct ban. The Khepri, though, is interesting because I maintain that you ban out playstyles, not characters. Fafnir is a playstyle. Excuse me. Khepri, on the other hand, that's just a Guardian that Raffer plays well. The revive is very different, but I think that if you give Raffer kind of any Guardian, he's going to do it. So, and the Athena, it's funny. I actually thought that Athena was going to be very highly valued in this set.
Well, it's still kind of fun with Renegades because in the realm of possibilities, I can't say that it's impossible to think that maybe this is Naja support in Cherio and Athena jungle.
Yeah.
I think that the flexibility option for Renegades could even be a little problematic here for Space Station, but I will say I am a much bigger fan of the Space Station draft now that they picked up the Agni there for andinster in the mid lane in comparison to trying to run back that double hunter. I had some concerns that maybe they were going to run back that double physical hunter comp, but SSG clearly valuing having some form of space control or zoning potential up against Renegades here.
And just more control in general. You know, Ho Yi actually brings that space control with the ultimate. The Suns are a big deal, but Agni has that split up into 3 separate bombs and bomb stuns, potentially. Chalk, not selected. Instead, it's King Arthur. Probably a better choice there. Renegade's going to last pick King Arthur. How the mighty have fallen.
They're both sustain heavy.
Yeah.
I will say that much when it comes to the Chalk debate. I also think that Chalk wouldn't have been an awful pick here for Renegades because that silence actually devastating, I think, against gods like the Agni.
And the Hun Bats as well. I think realistically, Chalk, yeah, he's a meme. But I think when it comes down to objective secure damage, why are we talking about Chalk? He's not even in this game. Renegades pick King Arthur, and they are up 1-0. Finch, take us away.
Be more than happy to, Tom. Good job, both you and Taco. We're going into the game.
Oh, I was excited about doing something fun.
I'm assuming you want to go back to Europe, right? You want to go back over to Britain? Yeah. Was that a
Well,
thing?
I don't know what I'd be called in a few months or years' time if I was looking.
Just more of your made-up language over there. But Space Station's draft, I think, here looks much better, I would say, this game. And in part, Renegades looks not as oppressive, definitely still good, but I would say they've both been brought a little bit more into line.
Definitely, and I think that's how the first 3 bans and picks really went through more than picks than anything else. The Yorman and the Freya Kronos, but the difference from SSG is drafting straight into the Humbats earlier on.
Yes.
And if you think about how things played out in the picks and ban phase last time, I think that's what they wanted there was the Humbats.
Me too.
But they kind of went to the set, which is a completely different, like, sort of draft experience. Now they've got a mid lane Agni though, a bit more AoE damage for them too. I'm not upset about SSG's draft here.
No, not at all, and I think Cyno's going to have a much bigger impact this time. Andinster will be on this AoE mage. That's something they were missing last time, too. Aqua had a good game on the Jormungandr, so you don't need to adjust that. JeffHindla back on the Terra. Space Station are in a much more straight-up sort of team-fighting comp around Cyno and Andinster. Renegades, though, got the Chronos and the Freya yet again. That's still plenty scary to me.
It is, and there's always going to be a bit of an issue to deal with, especially if you've got something like a, well, setup men more than anything else. You've got the Sash to set up, and you've also got the taunt. And regularly going to be able to get the taunts in and cause problems, force speeds out time and again. But we'll see how things start this time around, because Space Station, they're not on as much of a timer, in my opinion, of like, hey, we get past 15 minutes, if you've not done anything, you're going to lose the game. Because they can go to 15 minutes this game and be very comfortable going into the teamfight stage.
This comp is going to be good at multiple stages throughout the game. I think that the early potential really relies on level 5. Cyno and Andinster both change a lot when they get their ultimate, so they probably won't be doing much pre-level 5. But once they cross that point, I think they'll be relevant throughout the rest of the game, and so they don't have nearly, as you said, nearly as much to worry about. Though, a late game Freya Chronos, that could still be scary. You probably don't want to let them get fully into their stride.
No, but respect where it's due towards what Agni and a Jing will bring in the late game. Jing will get that crit online and be, well, almost unkillable at certain stages. And Agni, everyone always underestimates how much damage this freaking god does, man. He's always just dropping bombs and doing incidental damage that, sure, it might not get a kill, but it adds up and causes problems for a team to have to deal with.
Oh, come on. It's incidental damage when it's mid laners. It's fake damage when you're in the solo lane, huh? That's how we classify stuff around here.
Yeah.
Give our solo laners some credit.
No.
What do you mean?
What do? They sit in lane all day, complain about all the other people in the game and what they're not doing, while they can't even take a freaking totem of coup to support the team. No, Finch.
Yeah, if I hear that totem of coup sort of like drum noise and then my tower doesn't light up, maximum
laziness.
Oh yeah,
right?
Get over there and get it.
Get the coup. That's all you've got to do, man. That's all I care about in the early game.
Just that.
Give us a totem of coup, and then I'll clash you as a maybe decent solo lane. Because you ain't gonna peel. No solo lane always have to peel.
They're worried about getting their own stuff up. As Nika catching a little bit of the Jormungandr feels there in that solo lane matchup.
What a time to be alive when King Arthur was considered as a pick as number 10.
He was number 10, yeah.
That's kind of how it was, where you're like, okay. I like seeing Cherio come over to the left-hand side. He does this quite a lot. We've mentioned it on and off through the year with Renegades games, and obviously they've all been in quite a clump. But Cherio does lean a little bit more on taking a bit of farm away from Funballer in exchange for helping him with the purple buff. And then you see Rafa and Dardez be more of a pair in mid. This is something that I've seen a little bit more of Renegades than some of the other teams do in terms of where they share their experience.
Renegades have benefited from it so far. They had a really good start when they first came in, but then, like in these last few weeks, they've kind of had some struggles. It's been a lot of games back-to-back for them. They're playing a lot more than everybody else. Yeah. I do think that probably factors in a good bit for them, but it's kind of the lot they were dealt. If they want to make it to the Mid-Season Invitational, they got to find a way to fight through it, and winning this set would be that way to fight through. As Cyno tosses the monkey but doesn't bounce.
Yeah, clearing more than anything else. Yep. It's like, will the monkey do anything good? And you're like, no, okay, you'll be fine. But the main thing is just trying to get the farm online for Space Station in the early game and see if they can find a window. Now, left-hand side, there's always going to be Funballer pushed up, and that's why another reason why you'll see Cherio go over there, just to check in and say, hey, BaRRaCCuDDa, even though he's pushed up, I am always around watching, so don't think about sending Cyno over here, young man.
And this is why I wasn't that worried about BaRRaCCuDDa here coming into this set and, you know, being in any trouble, is because they will value this Jing Wei for him and its big safety. But that's a two-man taunt from Rapper. Does catch out Cyno yet again with the stop time. But wow, look at the patience from them both, holding on to the beads throughout all that.
I love the fact what Jeff does there as well, though. He's a bit incidental, but the fact that he gets taunted but immediately goes aggressive instead of running away, which is the natural reaction to being hurt is to run away. Jeff doesn't. He man modes back in and goes, okay, you punch me, I'll punch you back. And maybe my friends will help me out.
I think Jeff has sort of accepted that he's always already taking damage and always already about to die for the team. So, yeah, no surprise that he's gotten pretty good at not shrinking away when he's in trouble. There might be more aggression, though. Jeff comes in with the root. This lands on Dardez. In they move, beautiful. But they still don't have the Fear No Evil that cuts off a lot of their potential, and Dardez makes it out. Now Cyno is in some trouble.
Just a little bit of incidental extra damage that came through there. Cyno just hung around too long. Well, not hung around too long, but he used a somersault to go for the kill on Dardez. They were so close to getting that kill on Dardez. I feel like Andy and Cyno, didn't really pressure as quick as I expected them to. I thought they would push up a little bit quicker when they saw Jeff come in. Maybe it was a lack of confidence in Jeff finding that full connection or expecting the rewind out of Dardes. But in the end, it means that Renegades end up getting that first kill. But it should have gone Space Station's way, in my opinion.
There was a really good chance it should have. And a lot of those times you want to wait as long as you can to start committing because you don't want them to like kind of tell the jig is up and then jump away. But against Kronos, I don't think you have that fear as much, right? What's his great repositioning tool? He doesn't really have one. So maybe you can push up a little bit sooner and then trust in Jeff to land it. But I'm just surprised they went pre-level 5. I mean, that is so much better for them if they have bombs or ult.
Yeah, but if they go pre-level 5, though, Finch, take into account, Dardes doesn't have his ult. Now, sure, he dinged over to he was low on mana. If that was the window you want to try and gank a Kronos before he gets his rewind available.
Sure.
Same window that a Freya's in as well. Once she's got her ultimate, she becomes another beast. Same for a Jing Wei. There's quite a few characters in this specific game that if they get to level 5, it becomes a much trickier task to kill.
Unfortunately, Space Station couldn't make that pre-level 5 play work, and so it's Renegades who come out with that advantage. The first blood bonus, it goes their way. That's still not the end of it, though, for Space Station. They can try that same plan again. It'll be harder, as you said. They have to worry about rewind, have to worry about the Valkyrie's discretion, but I think it's still plenty viable, especially with an Agni. He can force out beads and other safety measures pretty reliably with those Agni bombs and stuns.
Definitely, and I think this is going to turn into an objective match between these two now, especially in this game too. I think it's mainly going to come down to the difference will be objectives and how they get played out, who gets it, and the fight after the fact. The early game now, with how this is played out, I don't think you're going to see much come of it. Even if you get a pick or two, it's not going to change the state of the game. It really will be the Furies and the Fire Giants that this one plays out.
And which team do you think is looking better around those fights? I think Renegades have the better sneak potential, but if it's a 5-on-5, I think I'm favoring Space Station and their AoE team fight potential.
And you're right, speed of taking it is definitely Renegades, right? They've got the speed to burst this down and maybe catch Space Station napping and not noticing it.
Right.
But Space Station, if it comes to a fight around that, have a very good team fight and a very good secure options too.
JeffHindla was taunted to start this fight off, but a good response from Anderson and cut this in half. JeffHindla drops his ult, Cyno drops his as well, but you can hardly tell. Cheerio rewinds, makes it back out of there, and it's really Space Station who end up feeling like the ones limping away.
And in the end, I mean, if you look at what was used there, Rafa still has his ultimate. Now, sure, you're not going to use your ultimate there, but that's the only real difference in that engagement. Both shells were exchanged. I guess Cheerio using the beads in that engagement is a small win for Space Station in the grand scheme of things.
That is nice. They got those Cheerio beads, and he'll be slightly more vulnerable. He's really reliant on getting a good ultimate to try and get himself to safety, as opposed to maybe someone like Dardes, who doesn't have nearly as much execution for the rewind to get him out of trouble. So it might be the better target to be a bit more vulnerable for Space Station.
Cheerio as well this game, going Talaria boots, something standard in the jungle these days for the extra mobility and mana regen too. But more important, it looks like he's going to go in a little bit deeper towards the Blackthorn Hammer. We've seen a lot of it this year, but I like it in this composition just because it's AoE burst damage that's coming out with those Agni bombs, and health is the real reason he's going to look to pick that one up. As well as, you know, the cooldown that's going to always be there and available for him too to help out Najah, to give him even more ability to spam and ability to heal.
Now, this start's gotten pretty core for a lot of our junglers. I like the invade we just saw there from Renegades, where Raffer was the one who went beyond the wall into danger to pull the actual objective, but Dardes stayed safe on the backside, just damaging it over the wall. Well done, made sure Dardes never in trouble, and they're able to steal away the buff.
Aquarius at level 9, same for Nico on this right hand side, Gladiator Shield versus the good old Helm boys for Aquarius. No real surprise that we won't see any action in that lane. There's just too much going on in the mid and left hand side to pay attention to, that I don't even think we'll see much jungle presence over there, barring, I don't know, an attempt at a Pyromancer that incidentally brings the solo layers in.
It definitely could be some Pyromancer steals from Renegades, and so Aqua's going to have to be mindful of that. We saw last game where he tried to use the ultimate to get in there and contest. It was a little bit late on it. I mean, it's tough to get the timing of all that right, to know they're doing it, to have all that information, but it's a part of his job, and he's got to make sure that he's on it.
It's funny because when I think about Jormungandr in the grand scheme of things, I think this year Nika's had the best plays on Jormungandr in terms of play style of it. I think Nika's definitely been the one in the Pro League that's looked the best on it. And when someone looks the best on a certain god, I'm always of the opinion, as we see the bees and Annie mid, hold that thought.
Immediately, the fight breaks out. JeffHindla's in trouble now. They drop the sash, but the Earth and Fury comes out, and that's enough for Renegades to stop looking for any more.
Yeah, beads being down and the ultimate out of Jeff is enough to be a nice little window for Renegades to maybe make something happen around the goal, potentially. talking about the Aquarius thing real quick, of the Yorm, I said Nika's really good with it. Generally when a person's really good with a god, they also are much better at knowing the matchups and who's going to win.
Right, and how to play against it. I know what you're talking about. And Nika's looked comfortable so far. I mean, he is on King Arthur. That certainly doesn't hurt in terms of your comfort in that laning phase. But as you said, I expect him to have a pretty good idea of the timings Aqua's going to be looking for and when the Jormungandr is going to be hitting their spikes and things like that as Red Buff gets invaded yet again.
And just consistently do this. If Renegades keep doing this, they're just going to keep getting a bit more of a lead. Look, no, we're seeing almost 2k approaching now in terms of just gold. Sure, 400 of that is from that first blood, but this could be second blood right here.
Cherio looking for Cyno, and Nika's right here for the follow-up. He was in the air once, in the air yet again.
That's
Cherio ends up getting the kill on Cyno.
Cyno wasn't even playing the game. He just got to watch. It was like an action movie that he was involved in, but didn't want to be.
Would you want to be involved in an action movie, Hindi?
I mean, not if I'm going to get hit by a King Arthur and a Najarul and just stand there and get wailed away on the entire time.
Yeah, I don't think I would sign up for that one. Funballer's rotating to this. I don't know if they recognize that Raffer has some help waiting in the wings, and Andinster might be in trouble. BaRRaCCuDDa, though, has now joined the fray, but those autos aren't quite doing enough. Funballer's going to keep hunting Andy, but Cherio is duking it out with BaRRaCCuDDa in the backline. He might be in trouble.
No, Cherry's got to be careful now. His ultimate is on cooldown, but all he did with the ring toss was buy himself a bit of time.
Wow.
Incidentally, I was confused as to why Andy pathed the way he did towards the Fury, but it was because Cherio was in the background hiding and looking for the pick on BaRRaCCuDDa. At the end of the day, I think Andy made the correct decision given all the information that was presented to him there. Even though it does look awkward to the fans at home, I don't think he had a real other option. The good news is that they could have potentially turned it around, but nobody else died. That's the main thing.
That was a really good collapse, though, from Renegades. I mean, that starts off with Raffer doing what Raffer does best, which is baiting himself, right? With Funballer lying in the wings and rotating over, with some help coming in from Cherio soon, too. And it ends up working out for him yet again.
And that whole fight situation, though, when you think about it, was Athena taunts, and you're like, why is she taunting? That's a bit weird. Oh, it's Raffer. Never. Oh, no, they're all hit. That's kind of what the situation is, where people can fall into the trap of, well, Raffer's in an awkward spot. He throws out his abilities now and again that can seem awkward, but sometimes it's method to the madness.
Yeah, it's so funny sometimes how, like, and I'm not saying 100% that that's what happened here, but like knowing the player you're up against, I think can factor in sometimes into how you play it, as yet again another red buff starts up. It'll be up to JeffHindla to try and defend, and he cannot. But how much like knowing who the player is that you're going up against can matter. Sometimes in poker you can get a reputation for bluffing a lot, and so they don't put you on really good cards, and then sometimes you can trap them.
Exactly.
It's something real similar here, where Raffer's like, that dude's always up here baiting himself, it's fine, and then yet again he doesn't.
Cyno going to instantly beats the Sash from Cherry, and soon after the taunt onto andinster.
Wow.
I tell you what, that was almost Christmas Day for Raffer and Dardas in mid, just because if Raffer would have landed the taunt just a second later in the right window, Cyno's beads would have been down, Andy's would have had to be burnt there, and they could have got even more damage out.
Funballer pressuring out Barry yet again. Remember, he's on the Jing way, so everything for him is A-okay, but Cyno still vulnerable, and despite the fact that he's on the Unbots this game, his impact doesn't feel a ton different throughout these first 13 minutes than it did from the set.
But don't worry about it. I'm really not concerned. The Fear No Evil is going to make an impact at one point in this game, and it could be a big difference.
Pretty good
too. Really is. The main thing is, if Raffer dash taunts someone, and he dash taunts in, and Cyno goes, Fear No Evil, right behind him, it separates the team from supporting and keeps him trapped in a very predictable and awkward position.
And even though he's had some deaths, he stayed close as Cherio takes quite a bit of damage from andinster. Has been able to reposition, but in comes Cyno. He can't quite make it to where Cherio is. Two members get taunted back, but Dardas is inside the rewind. How well timed, and gets away from all of it.
Now BaRRaCCuDDa under pressure has to airstrike defensively away as Jeff goes in to root multiple members in place. Wall after the fact is good. Realistically, though, watching that fight back real quick, Cyno's ult was just not pulled at the right time, in my opinion. He's much better than that in the grand scheme, and in the discombobulation of that team fight, I can understand it. But if he pulls that trigger a little bit earlier on the Fear No Evil and doesn't go for the big wombo of hitting everybody, it may have worked out a lot better for Space Station, because they were just inches every single time from getting the damage off onto the targets who were just out of reach.
And I think it is important when these fights end up in draws like that to remember how they started. That one starts with Cherio a bit out of position and really getting punished by Andy. So the fact that it's a draw is a bit of a win for Renegades, as now the Gold Fury is in their sights. No one from Space Station in range, and Renegades get it again, but Dardas is so low, and BaRRaCCuDDa is able to bring them down. That's the first one on the board for SSG.
Important kill for Space Station, but more importantly, you were just saying, like, in those fights, like, it's important important to see who comes out on top in those even fights. Well, Gold Fury goes to Renegades.
That does change it.
That fight is definitely a win for Renegades. Sure, they lose Dardes, whatever. We got a Fury out of the whole fight. Great plays.
Dardes is a nice target to take down, but I think that even he would be happy with that trade. Just look at these charts, man. A steady decline in favor of Renegades. 4,000 gold,
and that
5K experience.
That gold graph that you can see there, you see how it dips real quick? That's the gold for you. And then soon after, that's the Chronos kill onto Chronos by BaRRaCCuDDa. So the difference is, it's a win for Renegades in gold on its own.
Yes, pretty overwhelmingly still favors Renegades there. This has been where the real advantages come from. That Gold Fury was nice, but these purple and red buff invades on cooldown, on repeat, that's been the real problem for Space Station Gaming. And I don't even think they've lost fights there. For the most part, they don't even know the timers of when they're up. It's only JeffHindla, for the most part, who's been there in time to try and stop them.
One thing we don't really talk about sometimes, though, is how you clear the camps. And in terms of like what abilities or how easily you can clear camps.
Sure.
And when you look at Renegade's composition, it's a little bit easier to clear those camps without investing abilities that are going to be a bit awkward, right? Overhand smash is a little bit of a wind-up time.
Got to be a bit close.
Yeah, whereas look at Cherio. Ring toss,
yep.
And it pretty much clears a camp on its own. So having some camp clear that's speeded up and able to pressure is making that a lot easier for Renegades. Especially when you think about the likes of Dardes, who can just, throw the one over the wall and do some damage there too, or even the stun.
That's right, he can do a lot of his damage over the wall. Now to be fair, andinster can match poke and range pretty well, but Cheerio wants to get things started. Andinster has the beads forced early, so they target swap to JeffHindla, who still has the dash, repositions and gets out of there, but they got Andy's beads again.
Yeah, when we look back at the ban phase, the counter ban situation in this game, they did ban away Fafnir here, Space Station Gaming, but I think they could have looked towards the Athena too, just because of the double beads burners with the Naja. This is a situation where someone on Space Station always has their beads down. If there's a member, if all the Space Station have the beads up at the same time, we're in a better position for Space Station, but Renegades are doing a good job of consistently keeping somebody's beads on cooldown.
Dardes looks to burn down the tier 1. They switch over to JeffHindla. Good, Fear No Evil buys him a moment, but Jeff still ends up falling. Stereo with the turnaround. Windfire Wheels takes the Athena, brings her down, and they get the tier 1.
Oh, and a blink from Nika straight to the ult onto andinster, who has no beads available.
He's the target.
Pinned against the wall, will dash away, but now BaRRaCCuDDa has to deal with Cheerio.
And also Funballer. It's not ever the 1v1, so BaRRaCCuDDa backs off, recognizing there's trouble. Aqua does a good job, I think, with his ultimate in that fight, though. He comes in and disrupts it and prevents a lot of the follow-up underneath that tier 2.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if either the call was a little bit late from Aquarius to let Nika was knowing, but then again, if you've not seen the solo lane and just yet any blink ult you can't really expect it too often. But good recognition from Renegades for that window, and Aquarius did get to that fight in a reasonable time, is how I'd call that.
I think so too. Nika got there a little bit sooner, but that'll happen if one just leaves first. But Andy still in trouble, still no beads, and I don't know where he's supposed to go now. This
on
is
an adventure.
A pretty dead Agni.
He's just trying to live, man. Let the man live. That's all he wants to do. Cyno, help him.
Oh, back up, Agni. Is he out of there?
Yeah.
Okay, we like to see it.
And sometimes, that's why people are like, what's he going to do? Like, well, he's going to run and hope for the best. And the best was Cyno was there.
Ran towards his team.
And the dash was safe. But the damage has still been done by Renegades with that tier 1 being taken down in the mid lane. This opens the map up even more so for Renegades to get aggressive in the jungle. They'd already been stripping away the buffs, but now they're just going to be able to take even more from the jungle camps and in a safer position to do so.
Next Fury should be up here in about a minute, which will be, I imagine, the next real aggression from Renegades. It might even be a little bit before that to try and clear some space out for it. And so far, Space Station have really not been able to do much more than they did in Game 1. And look at this, BaRRaCCuDDa has actually gone a little bit different. I think last game, he went with the crit path, and that was into all the anti-hunter tech that was coming out from Renegades. This time that was going the Odibo into the Executioner. He needs to be able to chew through like the Athena and the King Arthur.
And the Odibo situation there is obviously it's easier clear more than anything else. It's safer clear and incidental damage that will be impactful because realistically, BaRRa is going to be auto-attacking Nika, Cheerio, and Rafa more than anybody else.
Right.
If he can get some damage off onto Funballer and Dardes, great. However, the crit definitely would have been a better situation for him here, but that's a good bait from BaRRa on this left-hand side.
Yeah, no ult now for Funballer. This should be a cleanup for Cyno, but Funballer has a well-timed Aegis. BaRRaCCuDDa comes in, but Funballer with the turnaround puts Cyno in the dirt. BaRRaCCuDDa falls as well. Don't give my man Freya.
I just think this is Space Station season being shown in its light right now, from just how it's been. Even with the incident with Cyno now joining this team too, they're still having these small windows where I just don't think they're getting the rub of the green very well in the grand scheme. I don't know if you use that sentence over here, but
Like,
that's what we use.
maybe like just a string of bad luck. Yeah, I think I get where you're going.
Everything just seems to be going against them. Like, that should have been a kill onto Fumble. I think they had the right window to do it if you take into account. Athena's ult was down, so he can't rotate in. Fumble is too far forward. That was a good play from Space Station. It just didn't work out.
I think you can put some of that, though, to the fact that they are just behind. It's not
That's
bad
true.
luck that they're a level or two behind, so maybe that hurts them a little bit, too. If they're even, they get that kill there.
Stop making logical sense, Finch. That's not what you're supposed to do here.
I often don't, so for the most time, I do my job as Cheerio tries to force down the Tier 2 tower. He could be in a whole mess of trouble here, though. Is able to use the ult to reposition and has Defender of Olympus to keep him topped up, but he goes back in. That sets up a nice kill for BaRRaCCuDDa.
He has to go back towards to try to avoid the ult out of Aquarius more than anything else, but God, it's a good chunk of damage then. And Jeff did find the root as well, but there's no further follow-up available. The Audi Pro procs have been making an impact, but not enough just yet. Renegades on the run. Nika, though, he's going to try and stand for a while and keep him busy.
I think we're finally starting to see King Arthur now.
Might die now.
But he's too far forward in his own. BaRRaCCuDDa and Aqua should be able to grab this one. Andinster finds Rafford. Finally, a good fight for Space Station. They pick up 3.
Yeah, sure, but they lose a Tier 2 tower.
Yeah, but they could have just lost a Tier 2 for free. I mean, look at the
No, you're right. I get you. I'm just trying to say, like, sometimes
it's not a huge, easy win. It's just it's nice to get something.
It's nice to go, okay, well, they got punished for what they did, right? But did we punish them hard enough? Maybe they can now, because this big swing, you can just see all the members of Space Station move to this right-hand side. This might be a fire giant call, this.
They're definitely considering it. They won't have Cyno's ulting for this one. Neither will they have JeffHindla's. No Frenzy picked up for their team. They went Shell Blink. So it's not the easiest fire giant pull in the world. Not with Funballer and Dardes here. They don't have any frontliners, but they have a ton of damage.
I think they go for it. I think they try and risk it for the biscuit here. All ultimates down. They're going to make an impact. It's just raw damage. Cheerio, maybe?
Just steps on the gas. Then he goes up to the Valkyrie's discretion.
They got it.
That's a kill. And Renegades strip away the FG. Cyno in some trouble as well. Renegades bring in disaster onto the House of Space Station, and they can keep pushing. This is their fight on the back end as well. 2 come up for Renegades.
You know what? I'm not even upset with Space Station with going for that, because I think it was the right call to try and risk it there and try and make the play. But the fact that Renegades get the FG and the fight after,
backbreaking.
We're going to a game 3 now. This one's in the bag.
It does feel that way, doesn't it? I mean, that's the kind of play that's overwhelming. And I mean it's overwhelming not just in terms of the numbers in the game, but that's overwhelming in comms. I don't know how you keep talking after that one, because it's really such a tough swing.
I respect the play. We're going to try and get a pick on Raph here, but he's still got his ult and he's very tanky at this stage. It's also worrying to see, the likes of an Athena being able to deal with a Hombat and a Jingwei at the same time. Shows how far of a lead they've got right now.
Cyno is tickling Rafford right now. He's able to very easily get away from that. Cheerio now is the backup of Defender of Olympus. Ring bounce almost enough by itself, and Renegades make it back out. Meanwhile, all the while, the rest of Renegades are getting the Phoenix in right. But about the Fire Giant call, that feels like a call that you're making and that I'm only okay with if you think you can't win any other way. I don't know if they could. I think they could stick in that game. Maybe if they don't do it. 3
members of Renegades are dead, right? Or 2 members of Renegades are dead, and one's recalling back to base. You've only got Dardes and Fumble. Sure, they're the damage dealers, Finch. They're the ones that are going to be swinging. But at the same time, your whole roster is at the Fire Giant. I think you made that call, especially when Dardes' ult was down and Fumballers too.
Sure.
I think I'm more worried about the Funballer ult than anything else there, just because he can incidentally do a lot of damage.
And maybe it's an issue of execution, right? Because Funballer just walks in and is just autoing into the back. I'm not exactly sure who it was, if it was Cyno or BaRRa, but whoever it is he found, he just autos them down, has the ult to respond to and get up in the air. Maybe they got to do more to stop him from just walking in the pit.
But it's that rub of the green, it's that luck factor again that comes up in my opinion, because I think if they lose the fight, they say if they lose 2 or 3 lives, but they still at least get the Fire Giant, that is a net win for Space Station.
Sure.
It denies Renegades having it for themselves, and they can sit back and farm a little bit more. It definitely was Space Station risking it, but I think the risk was calculated correctly in my opinion.
Sure.
And some of the fans at home won't see it that way, but that's my view.
No, I think that's fair. No one on Space isn't going to say that they felt like that was guaranteed. I don't think.
I think they did that themselves,
calculated, that was worth and that was something they had to do. So they understood the dice they were rolling. Renegades on the back of that push though got the right side Phoenix, the tier 2 in mid. It's just the left and mid Phoenix still standing, and they still even have Fire Giant for another minute if they want to keep pushing with it.
Now, what you're seeing with Space Station right now, after that Phoenix going down and after them losing the Fire Giant, they are trying to just take fights out in the open. They're trying to get a pick and trying to make sure somebody else is on respawn so they can try and take a 4v5 at their own base. they can find a cheeky pick here, it can help them out, but Renegades just did a good job of holding on and not giving up too much. Wait for all the relics to be up is the big key here. And with Funballers, both his relics being down now, it's still a little bit tricky for Renegades, this.
Down 17k gold and against a Fire Giant, even on the Phoenix, you don't feel great about that fight. So Space Station doing everything they can to tilt those numbers in their favor. Looks like it's Nika, not the jungler, who's threatening the mid lane Phoenix this time, but they will all regroup and move back towards the duo.
Just keep an eye on Rafa. He'll be the dash and ton opportunity. And they won't be scared to even go on JeffHindla because he's only level 14. But
Wow.
Jeff sensed him, blinked in.
He blinked past, Cyno followed up with the Fear No Evil as well, and Jeff is actually still relatively healthy. He's been made the target though of Cheerio's ultimate, brings him right back down so he gets off the route. But so far, SSG have held on.
They have, but look at the fact who's been injured. It's all the tanks. The front line's gone. They've got to fall back to base. And in doing so, it means it's only carries left to defend the Phoenix, and they're susceptible to dying very quickly.
They have been able to hold Renegades at bay for now. BaRRaCCuDDa gonna drop, and remember they still have to keep clearing these fire minions in right, and Renegades are ready to re-engage and get this party started. JeffHindla can't pull off a miracle twice, taunted in, and Dardes looks for that kill. Cheerio in some trouble as Aqua's breathing down his neck, but he repositions, but the Phoenix is still healthy.
It is, and that's important for Space Station that they managed to hold on there. Fire Giant just wore off on Renegades at the same time, so
Yeah.
the damage has been done. Renegades definitely in control. They may even look for maybe going back in here as they think Space Station will just fall in back too. No, okay. Renegades will fall back as well. Good defense from Space Station overall. Sure, the Phoenix on the right side was already down anyway. And now it's just a moment of Space Station to be able to like catch the breath, try and push out the waves a little bit, get maybe half an item, a full item completed at least. And that could hopefully help them out in the next fight.
Interesting, now the Rage has come out for BaRRaCCuDDa to try and give him some crit here late to go along with the explosive bolts. It's something that we've seen Jingwei's pick up as soon as third item nowadays, but he wanted to get the Audibo and Executioner online first.
And here's the thing, like if you're going for the Audibo, you have to forego the crit till later because you've got to get pen at some point in your build.
Right.
And the pen has to come after Audibo if you go in that route, so you've invested in there. If you go Rage, you're probably going to go the pen as well after that in Executioner anyway.
Yep.
You can't delay your pen any longer than that, so it delays your crit, but gets you a bit of AoE and incidental damage.
Fire Giant already at half HP, but Renegades no longer want that. They want this fight. JeffHindla isolated on the front line, does get the ultimate off and the dash as well, but Nika will not let him run away entirely. Cyno finds not too bad of an engagement there, but Aqua's the one that makes it back out inside that ultimate.
Damage has been pretty much done though to Space Station there because I think they just went a little bit too early on this engagement trying to defend the FG. Probably bought a bit more time to just wait it around. Instead, they feel like they committed a little bit early and Renegade's going to punish them for it.
Bunch of throws summarily. Cheerio sashes and takes one up into the air. Andinster has few options on the left, but BaRRaCCuDDa has already been sent back to base. Now there's only 2 members of Space Station left standing to defend. That's a nice 3-man stun, but Nika with the long-range accuracy means it's just my man Cyno left to try and defend up against all of Renegades.
And that call there, the Fire Giant, I like the idea of Space Station trying to defend it. They got their Phoenix back on the right-hand side. I just think they committed a little bit too early, or they got caught a little bit too early than they should have.
Yeah.
And Renegades got aggressive and just pushed them back out, and now, incidentally, win the game off the back of it.
Yeah, Renegades, I think, make a good call there to just drop the Fire Giant, take the fight instead. Now they can move in, take game number 2, this time a little bit over 27 minutes, but really within 30 seconds of how long they finished the last game, too. Very, very close together were those 2 times. Renegades very quickly up 2-0.
The writing was definitely more on the wall for Renegades there after that Space Station call of the Fire Giant. That didn't go their way. And then after that, it was all to do with, well, can Space Station fight back into this? I think the call to go with the Fire Giant and try and defend there is correct. Just getting picked before the Fire Giant was really committed to. When the Fire Giant's still at like 90 or 100% health, you can easily drop it and not feel too bad about it. It's when it's at 40, 30% that you're like, well, do we stay on the Fire Giant still or do we drop it?
Right.
That's the call you're trying to make a teammate.
And they just weren't quite sure, I think, you know, where to go. It looks like the call for them was to stick on it, and they just could not quite secure the objective. Now Space Station down 0-2 in a set they absolutely have to win to keep their mid-season invitational hopes alive. Remember, when they played Splice, I think they were up 2-0, and they ended up losing that one. Can they get their own reverse sweep? It's possible.
I'm still not counting Space Station.
Really?
Maybe. I just think
possible.
I just think the armor. It's to do with the armor. That's all I'm worried about. There's no way the armor's going to break this quick.
They got to trade the plot armor out, though, for some slightly better picks and bans.
You expect them to now 3-0 Renegades, right?
Sure.
The impossible odds
It's
of
very
doing
difficult.
that. And then have a fight against SK for the spot tomorrow.
I mean, that's the best storyline, right? So Hindu Man writes the script, so I'm assuming it's going to happen just the way that he says. We'll get it back over to the desk, though, and let him break it down.
Thanks a lot, Finch. Watching this one definitely makes me think of like Air Bud, Matt Christopher, Ace of the Diamond, where it's just like, all right, so the fan favorites have done everything they can to put their backs against the wall. Will they win? Taco.
I don't know. Not if they keep letting Freya Kronos through. There is one play that comes to mind that will sum up this entire match for you, and it happened around the 18.5-minute mark, and hopefully we'll be able to bring that to you guys a little bit later on. But in case you missed it, well, there was some very entertaining Fire Giant action as well going on for Space Station. And
look at the names. It's Funball on Freya.
Funballer on Freya, Dardes on the Kronos, but more importantly, I think that I'm not even in disagreement with Space Station going for the Hail Mary call. I am in disagreement for Space Station allowing Freya to be picked because this is what Freya does every single time.
And then, oh, by the way, right after it, there's Kronos coming in for the cleanup kill. That was, Taco and I were talking, and we were like, you know, did they really figure out how to beat Freya Kronos? Obviously, Space Station didn't. And as we're talking about whether you should ever let these two characters really get through on the same, that's when that play happened. And we see Freya turn around, an impossible turnaround, get the kill, and then just out of just kind of like Hollywood magic, also Dardes shows up and one-shots a runaway player. I mean, listen, it's usually not this simple. And maybe there are some extra variables, but I'll be very honest. Space Station Gaming won't win if they let Freya and Kronos through a third time. It's just not going to happen. I don't know how else to say it.
And it's not even that it's an impossible task, right, to beat Freya and Kronos whenever they both wind up on the same team.
Right.
But for starters, I can't remember the last time we saw SPL teams permit both of those gods to go to the same team. And to add more to that, I also can't remember the last time we saw Space Station have success against either one of those gods, singular.
It's also right now magical carries are the what everybody wants to play. It's the flavor of the week right now. In addition, Renegades plays these two selections very well. In addition, Funball specifically has been a Freya specialist since the god came out. When Freya was 5 years ago, Funball was soloing people on Freya. And last year, when nobody was playing Freya, Funball still brought it out.
The only win SK had was with Funballer playing Freya, and it's
even if Kronos Freya wasn't so hot right now, I still would want to see Funball on it. It's just...
And it's everything else that Renegades had to complement the Freya and the Kronos. It's that, I think, is more the issue than everything else, because Space Station, while they can anticipate the Freya and the Kronos, it is significantly more difficult to kind of pre-plan where you expect Renegades to go when they get both of those picks at the same exact time, because the possibilities are endless at that point for the Renegades. We saw Space Station try to tackle Raffer's God Pool choices, but Raffer's got the Athena to fall back on. You can only get 2 free bans, and with Space Station wanting to put a lot of value, I think, into this Jorm Terra, I can understand that, but you can't allow that Freya Kronos to go through and then expect Jorm or Terra to have any sort of impact, because sure, they might be able to tackle one, but they're never going to really have an easy time challenging both simultaneously.
And it's not a hard counter. There really aren't that many hard counters to auto-attack characters anymore. You used to look at mainly Odin, and that doesn't exist. And you can look at the Xing Chen, and maybe
Space Station are banning the better options. Like the Daji, Muzen, those are probably 2 of the better gods for dealing with Freya Kronos, and Space Station is banning them every single time at the start.
Let's go!
3rd time's the charm, though. No more Kronos.
As you see, both Andy and Jeff just rub their face, just go, oh no. Oh, we caught the Jeff special. The finger lick.
I mean...
That is gross of me, dude.
Space Station is going to need a lot of specials to try and bring this one back.
They're going to need a lot of superstitions, for sure.
It is tough enough, but this corner that they have backed themselves into is not going to be an easy one to crawl out of by any stretch of the imagination here. And Renegades know it. They're going to stick to their guns and keep that Hobwa band away. Freya's probably going to be the immediate response from Renegades here. Although, I think with Daji still being left open, now Renegades could possibly even look to respond with an early Daji pick.
The Freya Daji. Daji is, we were talking about Daji a lot. She's better Loki, right? The idea is that she one-shots players in the late game. It's real nice. But also has a fun sort of like, Ares ult. You can chain everybody and good looks with that. So it's kind of a nice look for Cherio, but he's going to go back to the Naja. Do you expect to see more Daji as the season progresses?
Possibly at MSI. I mean, Daji is just a really good response pick for gods like the Merlin.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of mages right now who can really struggle when dealing with her burst damage.
Just Delito.
It's definitely something to keep in the back of your mind, but for right now, I think that Renegades might just be looking to establish their support for Raffer here. I would imagine that Space Station probably going to try and take a couple more blows. They've been putting a lot of emphasis, I think, into trying to keep the Fafnir at bay.
Certainly something that they're trying to do. Renegades now, though, that might not be the same thought process as they only have the Freya so far. They go with a double hunter or a hunter mid. That might introduce the Fafnir anxiety one more time. The Zhong comes through here for Space Station Gaming. And it's an interesting choice. This guy's tankier than most, usually has more protections. And so with that in mind, the magical carries kind of don't do as well of a job against him, theoretically.
Sometimes. I think it really just all depends, but one thing I do like about Renegades is that if they do decide to revisit that double hunter aspect, well, Naja, I think, is probably one of the better setup tools that Renegades could have to offer right now, because Cherio is going to have the flexibility to either try to build a little bit more pen-based, I think, to try and isolate gods like the Zhonghui and the Jing and any sort of other potential frontliners that might be coming through from Space Station. But Renegades, I mean, they'll softly threaten the double hunter composition still with this Fafnir, and now Space Station have to make the committed decision between trying to ban away hunters or trying to remove another utility setup component that Nika could try and bring out.
Really smart play here from Renegades, because Fafnir doesn't lock you into a specific strategy. You obviously start thinking about all the auto attack characters in the world, but Fafnir doesn't force you to do that. Fafnir can absolutely operate without having double hunter comps, etc. And plus, Freya Naja benefits from Coerce real well. Flaming Spear is insane. So Naja can shred through objectives very well, just like some of the other carries. So Fafnir, an interesting look. Space Station, however, will ban out the Poseidon, something that we've seen Dardes play very well, and also the old funball Poseidon ADC certainly lurks somewhere.
Lingers.
It won't ever go away.
It has its fair share of viability to it, though I'm not certain that with this current comp that's the direction Renegades were headed, but I understand Space Station's thought process, because cracking off of the Windfire wheels is always going to be kind of the bread and butter, I think, of some basic initiation there for Renegades. So not want to have to worry about it. That on her ban might have been a little bit more important, though.
Yeah, that on her ban, that's a lot of what Dardes has been doing in that mid lane. That's a lot of what Funball has been doing. Funball and Dardes have just kind of, they have the same, they just have one god pool among the two of them, and they can kind of mix and match. They were hovering over the Artemis real quick. I honestly couldn't tell you where Artemis or Freya would have went. Like, that's...
Could have gone mid.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, is that this Dardes Funball, there's so much ambiguity there, because I think Dardes will literally play whatever in the mid lane, has no problem playing hunters, previously played hunter position. Funball is the guy that plays Zeus, Poseidon, Vulcan, like, he'll do anything in the long lane. So that whole conversation about where those two going is always fun to watch.
This set hover, though, is scary, and I don't mean scary for Renegades. I'm saying scary for Space Station, because that is a lot of risk versus reward being placed into one god selection choice here. And I just want to remind you guys, game one, Set was Cyno's god choice, and he was pretty much able to do a whole lot of nothing with it, because Renegades made sure to be grouped up on a lot of their initiation points, and would oftentimes even catch Cyno out inside of the jungle and be able to force him, whether out of his ultimates, his actives, And it just never really felt like Space Station got a ton of value out of that set pick in Game 1. Maybe they're feeling a little bit more confident now in Game 2 since they don't have to deal with Freya and Kronos together. But I'm still skeptical to believe that Set is going to have the punish that Space Station need against Renegade's current composition. Renegades just have so much peel.
Yeah, we'll see about the set. My jury is still out. The fact that he's so difficult to play, not just, hey, can I push my buttons, but also if you're not set up, no pun intended, you're not really going to kind of execute well because you know your little kind of minion set. Horus, on the other hand, Space Station Gaming, I love the Horus pick. I think it's funny. We always talk about how Jeff is your traditional support, wants to play the Guardians. Horus is a warrior by definition, physical damage, technically. But at the end of the day, this is very much a traditional Guardian-feeling character. So I like the fact that Jeff's going to be on this one. Renegades up 2-0. Taco, do they end it here?
Yes.
We'll see if that's true. Hindu Man and John Finch, take us away.
So, am I the only one that saw the play Funballer did last game on Freya, where he got the 2v1 play in dual lane?
Yeah.
And yet I see Funballer here on Freya yet again?
But there's no Humbatsy this game, so we can't do the same play.
Oh, you're right. Yes, Cyno's on set this time.
I will say,
no
like,
way that can happen again.
In this game, Finch,
Go
I
ahead.
actually do like Space Station comp. Like, I know a lot of people at home may be like, oh, what are they doing?
I'd love to hear this.
I do think this comp on paper is actually really strong.
Right.
The fact that they've got multiple threats in different roles, some that are going to be much harder to kill than others, and then also this Horus that can help them out. JeffHindla is going to be someone that, when I first saw Horus played, I'm like, Jeff is going to love this. He does everything he wants him to. More
He
importantly,
can physically move BaRRaCCuDDa out of harm's way.
so more importantly, the last time we saw the set played, it felt like if you see set, you kill it.
Right.
Well, you're going to do the same thing now, but I think it comes down a little bit more to how andinster plays this Zhong in the mid lane.
I think they have a lot more dive potential with this draft,
They
which
do.
I do think helps out Cyno
It's
quite a bit.
Additional threats is the issue.
Yes.
So think about a Naja, right? In a team fight, Naja would love to go, Zhong's ult in, I will use my ult to take him away from the fight. And against Cyno on set, he's going to be like the same thing. He's trying to get in there, I want to take him out of the fight. You can't do it to both. So the question is, what can Andy do? If he doesn't get focused in the fights, he has to be the damage dealer and try and get attention on him. If he's not being the focus, sorry, if he is being the focus and it's not Cyno, then it's Cyno. This is a lot of pressure on Andy and Cyno, in my opinion, to perform this game.
I just think that there's just that this comp does a much better job of spreading the fight out, which gives Cyno a better chance of potentially getting the 1v1s that he wants, right? Andinster uses the big recall demons, and it kind of spreads Renegades out. Aqua comes in with his ultimate, and that displaces and spreads the fight out. I think that this fight, because of all this AoE, this comp gives a lot more options for Cyno. Plus, JeffHindla can kind of dive with him with the heal, the knockups, the roots. There's a lot more tools, I think, to make this set way more successful.
And that's why I like this composition. The only problem is when we talk about all that, when you look at what Renegades have drafted, mobility is a big key word here for Renegades, especially with this Amaterasu. And this gank could be absolutely brutal.
Yeah, ring bounce comes through right away and causes problems, but JeffHindla is on the Horus. The knockup's there, and some nice follow-up damage. So unless they want to keep on fighting, they should be okay. But JeffHindla seems happy to keep trading because Andy and Cyno are on their way, and they might have bit off a bit more than they could chew. Meditation already came out, and there's a nice slow from Cherry, but level 2 for Cyno.
That shell, actually, from Rapper was huge. Prevented a lot of the damage onto Cherry, allowed him to get his potions ticking away to get him back up to a healthier pool. More importantly, though, Space Station got the blue buff, which denied all 3 of these Renegades members from getting experience for the last about 20 seconds, which is really important in this early stage, and allowed Space Station to have a level lead and actually be in control in the early game because of all this, and steal the blue.
That's a nice job they did controlling the blue buffs on the right-hand side. So much better than how things went for them before. Because I think because of the big sort of like flashy play Space Station went with the FG, we kind of forget Renegades built up a 5k lead the old-fashioned way.
They did.
Just stealing the red and purple buff on cooldown. That's another thing Space Station have done, is I think they've got some pressure, except for dual lane obviously, where now they can be a little bit more around for those buff camps and not get bullied so much.
And you also saw Jerry just hit level 2, just now. 2 minutes in the game and your jungler only hits level 2. In that game, in a ranked game, you'd be like, oh no, get me out. But luckily enough, there's going to be a chance for him to farm up. Space Station are in a bit of control now, where they have a bit of a window to be aggressive, I feel, as this game approaches the level 5 mark. Look for Cyno to try and pressure the dual lane, because Funball is still going to stay this pressured. But this time round, I don't think he's going to get as much support from Rafa or from Cherio, because they're behind an experience by a bit.
Did you see BaRRa's face cam just now? He had the face of a man who's had to fight Freya 3 times in a row now.
The face of a Jing player. That's
Yeah,
what it
the
is.
face of someone who's like, ugh, this is just the... I mean, this is how I know he does not get a vote in what they banned first. Because there's no way, right, that he would say, yeah, give me another Freya matchup, by the way. So, yeah, someone else made the call.
Renegades definitely do have a little bit of an awkwardness in the mid lane, though. Like, an ul in the mid is fantastic for clear and burst damage.
Right.
But he is a little bit more susceptible to CC chains, no CC immune
A lot more,
ultimate.
I agree.
It's a lot easier than, you know, Chronos, for example. So expect to see, there's a small advantages here and there for Space Station. And it sounds like I'm trying to big up Space Station, but I'm just presenting the windows that they've got this game.
And they have some. And Hindu, it makes sense, right? Because we're in a 2-0 for Renegades, and the first 2 games have not been particularly close. So seeing the way Space Station get back in it is the more interesting one, I think, to talk about for sure. And they have some.
I'm a professional rooter of losers. I root
You're
for the
a
losers.
balancer.
I have to.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is Thanos. That's who Hindu Man is.
Oh,
He
yeah.
wants the world to be balanced.
For sure, I would click my fingers. No problem.
You would do the snap?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I'd
God.
click it. I'd run the risk. A
It's
gambler
like
too,
gambling.
right? It's a win-win.
Cyno, though, wants to go in aggressively, ends up blinking towards that sand clone, and is able to not quite strip it away, but is at least able to find some nice poke.
Just forcing him further back if you can and try and deny some farm anyway. Raph still being level 3 is definitely impactful, especially now that Jeff's hitting level 4. Sure, Jeff hitting level 5, in the grand scheme of things, isn't the biggest win. We saw a few players out of Mike earlier on this week on the Horus, and he's definitely something that's going to take a lot of getting to grips to. I feel there's definitely advantages for the fans at home and people who watch in Spectator all day to feel what it's like from a bird's eye view, because the bird's eye view of the map does help you to play this character, in all honesty.
It's a lot. I mean, it's so different. And these 2 gods we just added, the Horus and the Set, I mean, the Set obviously just entirely is really difficult. I think Horus's base kit is not the hardest in the world, but I'd say these are 2 of the tougher gods we've added in recently, both of them, to get the maximum value out of them. And Space Station, in an elimination game, in a must-win set, have picked both.
And that's a big thing about the whole Horus pick as well. You
Yeah.
said, like, technically it's not a tricky god to play, but it's very time-consuming to get the full amount of effort that you can get out of this god in terms of effectiveness. The stun,
Yeah.
then the shred, but that takes time. The knock-up, then the slow and damage, but they take time as well. So sometimes you've got to try and pick your windows correctly and not just, like, spam those buttons.
Yeah.
Because your window might not present itself. They're tricky gods, both of them, for different reasons.
Yeah, I think Horus has a low ceiling and a high floor, which to me means that he's a very well-designed god, and I think he is. And I think he is. There's which means that new players can come in and get some good value out of him, even if they don't know him that well. But also that there's a lot to be gotten at the high end from him.
I like the start of banning out of Rafa early. It's interesting to see him actually go that route in the support option. Normally you're looking for mobility in the early game as a support to be able to get around and get the farm. I guess with the fact that you've got Coerce, you can incidentally farm easier anyway. But that's down to ban. If he hits a target, they'll die pretty quick if he hits a hammer, because the follow-up damage will be increased due to the protection loss.
Wow, he went that right away.
Yeah.
You don't often see it. I wonder if that's going to limit his rotation ability, though, too, just not having the boots at all to get around with.
Funny enough, it might be because of the early game going against Renegades a little bit in terms of that farm, and they were behind. So he went, well, if I'm not going to be able to farm and be aggressive, then if they do get aggressive, I can help out my team a little bit more with the Stone of Binding option. I'm trying to think of reasons why you'd look at that, and that is the only one that I can really think of on the top of my head.
Right, just maybe they're not looking to be aggressive at all, so it doesn't
Exactly.
matter. That definitely can make some sense.
Well-
and I do think this is a slightly harder comp to be aggressive into than it has been in the past.
What if you also think about how we talked about game 1 when we saw the set picked up then? It was all about, can set do something in the first 10 minutes? And in this game again, it's another window where Space Station control the first 10 minutes with how it's looking and how the beginning began. But now, the gold lead is only 500. Experience is starting to normalize a little bit, but you can still see leads, funny enough, for Renegades in the mid position, which I'm quite surprised at.
Probably some differences in how they're splitting. I mean, I don't know if it's all doom and gloom for Space Station if they don't get ahead early.
No,
I mean, they've
it's
got
not.
plenty of presence. I mean, and it is an Uller that's another one who would really like to pressure you into the early mid-game and is not as potent late. So they kind of match in that regard. I think Space Station still have plenty of chance late.
Now, because we've not seen Set and Horus together before, we've not touched on the interactions between those two.
Right.
But think about the fact that Set doesn't have a whole lot of CC in his kit. Horus does. Set has a hell of a lot of mobility. So does Horus. Horus can jump to Set and do all the CC chains for him. If Jeff and Cyno can play this well together, there is a chance that they could just pub stomp
Yes.
a couple of characters in this game out of position, because all it's going to take is a Jeff leap onto Cyno, who's already being aggressive, and this could be a 2v2 you're looking at here that may even impact.
I do like
the
them
situation.
together, and I said it before that I think that they pair up to give really good dive potential. And when you factor in the Aquarius on the Jormungandr, that gives them even more. I think that there's a much bigger chance they can kind of roll down the hill over Renegades if a fight goes their way towards the beginning.
It is a common space station we've got here, though, that's very trying to distract everybody. What you're trying to do is pull the wool.
They're trying to spread everyone out, yeah.
They're trying to pull the wool over Renegade's eyes of like, hey, look at Horus. Hey, look at BaRRaCCuDDa. Hey, look at the Zhong. Oh, look at this. It's a Yorm in my face. And nobody pays attention to the set. If they can make that happen, then set's going to have a field day. But it's a very tricky task to ask against at the highest level of play.
Yeah, it's a comp where you want to be together to stop the set, but you can't be grouped up together because you'll get andinster by the Zhong. I like what they've done, as Raffer has been the target, but he has stayed real calm, gets that hammer, and that allows him to stay alive despite how far pushed up Space Station are. And this is good from Nika to kind of swap out those blue buffs.
Really good word choice there from you, Finch, as well. Calm. And that's one thing you have to be in a support mentality sometimes. Not just hit the button as soon as you get pressured. Realize that you can take a bit of damage. Recognize that abilities have been used. There won't be too much more follow-up. And the fact he was calm just made it look so relaxed and less of a pressure situation than he was actually under.
Renegades are still being even though Space Station were just in their jungle, so were the Renegades. Nika came down to the blue buff. We just saw Dardes was way down in their jungle as well, looking for farm. I mean, it's what worked so well for them in games 1 and 2, so even against this draft from Space Station, they haven't went away from it.
That's a confidence factor too. I mean, you're in a best of 5, you're up 2-0 after the first 2 games. Why would you not be quite happy about, okay, sure, we're not doing so well right now, but it's okay. We'll still play aggressive, we'll still play our game plan. And that's what they're going to want to do and make sure Space Station don't get a chance to initiate what they get.
For what it's worth, Cyno has done a pretty good job farming a little bit better than Cherry, at least in terms of experience. Axe won't land on a JeffHindla, so he'll actually continue to be aggressive to try and set up for Andy, but not much more will come. And that's something that's happened in all 3 games. We've not had a particularly early first blood yet at all. They usually come around 10 minutes or so in these games.
You might see a bit of a play towards it from mid lane there. Cyno gets aggressive on Dardes, who just left, remember, but he took Aegis early on, which is good, but are the ghosts good enough? I don't think so.
Just not enough damage, but JeffHindla took so much from the tower, that could end up spelling the end for him, and absolutely will. There comes out the ultimate from Cherio. First blood for Renegades, and Funballer matches it as well by taking down Andy.
Yeah, and that's just, once again, same situation as game 2, funny enough. Space Station get aggressive, and just before they get enough damage on to get a target and get the first blood, they survive, and then Renegades turn it around.
Was your made-up green expression you said to me?
Rubber the green?
Something like that, yeah?
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
They're unlucky. They're just, it sounds like it's unlucky, but in the grand scheme of things, if it happens consistently, it's not unlucky anymore, is it?
Sure. But I mean, and you're right. I mean, that was not a bad engagement there from them at all. No. They just did not have quite enough damage to lock down the Renegades and clean that up.
The word we after there is telegraph. It was too telegraphed, and I think that's the one problem they're having. Aquarius, though, he will get away. I love the fact that he still goes back in. Full respect for that first shot, because sometimes, like, when you get pressured that hard, you're like, oh, get me out, but he's already got the presence of mind to at least get a little bit of damage out first of all.
Yeah, I love that our Yorm players have really got it ingrained in their brains already, that first hit is almost always for damage. There's very few situations where you shouldn't at least get some damage out from that first one, so I love that that's become, you know, sort of the habit for these guys, even like you said, when you're taking that much damage that quickly.
And like we said about the telegraph stuff as well, Finch, the whole thing that I'm having an issue with Space Station is I feel like I can look at them and go, they're being aggressive now. And Renegades can do the same thing that I'm doing, where we're like, okay, clearly they're going to get aggressive. Hey guys, we're about to fight us. We all ready? And then you're ready too. You know what I mean? Like, you can be ready for the counter initiation. The ideas from Space Station are good. You can see them. It's just the execution is just not following it up, unfortunately.
And we talked about Raffer and how maybe if he goes that Stone of Binding early, he wouldn't have much mobility, and how would that hurt? It didn't at all, it seems like, right? I mean, he's now got the Reinforced Grease online. He's made it through beyond that without any trouble.
I noticed the plays that Raffer have done so far. When you saw him and Dardes both being pressured in the same spot by Jeff, he didn't try and escape. He stood there and went, focus me, friends. I am the one you want to hit. Allows Dardes to get away. He'll get attention paid to him for a second or two, which creates a window for escape for his carries. It's a good play.
Doesn't it feel like Raffer has passive taunt or something, right? Where he just pulls a little bit towards him all the time.
I think a lot of supports feel like have that too,
sure.
to be fair. Jeff, incidentally, does have that, but that's because he's always the one that will be the last one. First one in, last one out.
Right.
That's his mentality, and I completely understand it.
It's a good mentality for your supports to have, as BaRRaCCuDDa finally gets a few shots up on Funballer, who's really had a great time this set with the Freya matchup into the Jing way. Has been able to kind of push BaRRaCCuDDa back, but a few shots go Bear's way this time. A nice, very tiny victory.
No solo kills, though.
No solo kills.
Although a 2v1 is pretty good. Was it really a 2v1?
I would say so. JeffHindla in a whole heap of trouble. Sash locks him down, and Cheerio gets the kill credit for it, man. Horus, a little bit too far forward, and he paid.
I just don't think Horus is the frontline god that you're after. He's more of a backline peel setup anti than anything else. He needs somebody else to go aggressive first, like Cyno, but they're not playing it like that. Cyno's kind of waiting for all the CC to go down, and now Andy is in trouble.
What is all this then? Nika's here between the tier 1 and tier 2 and able to come find Zhong. Andinster just barely makes it out of there, but now Aqua's in trouble. He still has his ult, and that's going to have to come out defensively again.
And then the question is, where's he going to go to? Because after that first knock into place, he's only going to be back under a tier 1. They might go for a kill here.
They certainly could. I mean, Aqua without the ultimate, Yorm is quite vulnerable, but they saw JeffHindla there, comes in for a nice heal. That would have been too much peel.
And what we've seen so far, though, is Jeff trying to be the initiator on this and trying to get a setup with the stun or with the knockup. I'd rather see Cyno or Andy play up a little bit more and have Jeff dive into support instead of it's Jeff manually doing this. Horus isn't the greatest at trying to get range because it's very like, I have to walk at you and like, basically it's like an Earthbreaker from a Hercules is what you're after in terms of the range of that stun. But this commit for the Gold Fury from Space Station is very interesting.
It is very interesting. It feels a bit like a 50-50, but they win the coin flip that time, though. JeffHindla might be in a bit of trouble. If he can get that dash up, he can't.
Did he use his heal already in that engagement?
He must have. He definitely used it while they were on the Gold Fury to keep the team healed up.
I wasn't sure because I'm like, why did everyone just abandon him? Because like, he just come near him so he can jump to you, you know? Right. And they all went, nope, screw you, Jeff, we don't care. It wasn't the case. His heal was down, so it's not a bad situation though. Support for a Gold Fury. It's a good play from Space Station. And because of that, the gold difference is only 400 gold, which is nothing.
And I want to point out the 4-0 might look kind of bad, but all those deaths are on Jeff, who's happy to take them. And for the most part, everyone else has been relatively safe except for the one death for Andy.
Yeah, but that one death for Andy, look at the experience difference in mid because of that
bad.
finish. That's kind of where the add-up's going to be, the build option as well. That Transcendence stacking for Dades. His power spike is going to come when he gets that Transcendence completed and whatever his next item be, which will probably be a Crusher, maybe a Brawlers.
I can see Crusher.
I'm only thinking Brawlers because of the sustain that Space Station are bringing to the table this game.
Bancross first item, the heals from Horus are obviously there as well too, so it makes some sense to try and strip this one away, and then obviously any healing that BaRRaCCuDDa wants to build or anything like that, so I could see it. We'll see where Dades wants to go, though, with that very next slot. And Space Station have finally started to show us some affirmative play by moving on to the Gold Fury and forcing.
Definitely, and I think the call was right to go for the Gold Fury there. If you like we talked about builds and like opportunities and such, Exorcism from andinster on the Zhong does a lot more damage than people bargain for. That second ability bursts really heavily and is pretty quick to cast these days. Still not the quickest in the game, but it's a lot better than it used to be.
Dades really has bullied andinster here in this mid-lane matchup. I wonder how much of it is how they split the waves, or if he's just done a better job forcing andinster to back so far. I mean, the immobile Zhong kind of a bigger target. I mean, Hail of Arrows is probably going to hit more times than not.
Yeah, especially if you're someone like Dades. The one thing about the Hail of Arrows that I never realized, like it was Ryan that pointed out a while ago, it's been, you know, about 6 months I've known now, but it's on a Y-axis that I didn't realize. I didn't realize it was on an axis. I thought you could aim it left and right. Talking about aiming left and right, someone needs to right now in Space Station.
JeffHindla used the ultimate defensively. We don't see Horus do that very often, and he is able to reposition. Cyno, on the other hand, has also dropped the ultimate, it would seem, and not found much value. But look at andinster going in away on the back line. He's still okay for now, but Hail of Arrows did quite a bit on him as he falls back. And Aqua wants to keep pushing in, though, and that has brought Raffer quite low, but can't hit the last hit.
Where's Cyno? I'm looking for Cyno. He's got to get involved in the fight at some point in time here and cause problems. That's what I'm waiting for. Andy, though, against Neek is not going to be fun in that situation. He'd already used his ultimate, and that was on cooldown. Cyno now looking to engage around the back.
He should be able to come find Cheerio, but they have that vision, the Oracle vision. They'll see him coming through and know where he is. Aqua is the next one in trouble. He is able to get the wiggle off, and that's good peel from Jeff. It cost him his life, but now Cyno's here, but can't find the cleanup. That's 4 for 2 in favor of Renegades.
Yeah, unfortunate situation there. I was calling for where's Cyno because the Zhong had all the attention. He forced a couple of defensive relics, a couple of defensive ultimates, and that's the window where you're like, okay, bit less CC now, bit less survivability. You want your assassin in there to try and do cleanup crew. He couldn't find the window, and the tail end is just Renegades pick up some more kills.
He'd already used everything. That fight kind of started with him in the Kingslayer ultimate, and it was already on cooldown when andinster goes in. But that's exactly what it's supposed to look like you said, right? Andy's in there dropping the ult. Yep. It causes sort of chaos, and that's where Cyno can thrive. It's just that the timing wasn't the way they wanted. I think Cyno was put under too much duress at the beginning of that fight. Also, so was JeffHindla. I mean, that might not be a bad fight to use Horus to reposition in the middle of, but they didn't have that ultimate.
No, and I think that's the one thing. Space Station are trying to bring chaos to these fights time and time again, so they're going to be sporadic and all over the place. But Renegades are all about survivability and mobility, and that's the fight we're going to see all through this game 3.
Nika did a really good job to catch out andinster during that fight to keep this lead ballooning up for Dardes. That's been there throughout this set too. Dardes has been pretty far ahead of andinster, and I think more than any other matchup throughout the entirety of this set. And that's really hamstrung Space Station as well. It's so difficult when your mage can't match their output.
Well, it's also the first time that he's played more of an aggressive god in the early game. Kronos doesn't bring a whole lot pre-level 5 if you think about it. He's all there for farm. He wants to scale up, but an Ul pick, well, that brings so much more pressure to the mid lane, so much more kill potential in the early game, and Dardes is really pushing the lead through again. We saw a 4-level lead previously for him in the mid lane, but on an Ul, it's much more of an impact at this stage.
You can definitely feel it. He did elect to go with that Brawlers in the end. We were wondering where he'd go, and he did select the anti-healing option. That still gives him plenty of pen. It's just the attack speed and sort of that dot effect he's losing now. But the next Fury up in about 10 seconds, and look who's right nearby. It's the Renegades. But with Raffer backing, maybe they don't want to grab it.
It's not a terrible window right now. They've still got a couple of people in the area. Just keep an eye on where the solo laners are. That's what you're looking for. When you see Aquarius over here, I'm like, okay, well, where is Nika? Especially with his tier 1 tower being down, Nika's here. And as long as he's in the area, they're not too threatened about a cheeky Fury attempt from Space Station again, like the first one was.
Dardes is topping player damage just because he's been landing these axes really well to set up for the hail of arrow bladed arrows. We just saw it on Aqua. He's been hitting him on andinster all game long. He's really, really comfortable on this Ul.
And sometimes it can be classed as fake damage because he's against a Zhong with Bancrofts who's going to go, okay, I'll eat your combo and then heal back to full. But it has made an impact in kills, and the Fury's started up.
Whereas the early target, once again, forcing them to use his ultimate earlier than they want. Andinster moves in, drops the recall demon to Dardes, gets obliterated, exactly what they want. In comes the Horus, JeffHindla joins the fray, but it's 1-for-1 so far.
Cyno's target selection is a little bit awkward for a second. He went for Rapid, but switches to Cherio, but Cherio's mobility is keeping him alive just a little bit longer. All the while that we're chasing down Cyno, the backside of Space Station Gaming, turn it around.
This is finally the fight that they wanted, finally the look that they've been after. BaRRaCCuDDa get to double. Even Raffer's in some trouble as Aqua hunts him down. And look at all this backing for Space Station. I don't even think they want this Fury.
Right.
They want the Fire Giant.
And that's why Aquarius is going to slowly...
but Raffer's leading him right there.
No, this is fine, because the main thing is Raffer can't do anything. If he can't base, he can't come back. I won't kill him yet. I may have
Stagger him a little bit more?
Maybe stagger him just a little bit longer, but this is a Fire Giant, and this is exactly what we're looking for from Space Station. Their composition was designed to do
exactly that.
Just that.
And what a clean fight from them. And they didn't use the Horus ultimate to bring in multiple people. It was just JeffHindla, but everyone did their job. Aqua got forced into his ultimate early, but still got max value out of it. Andinster blinks in with his ultimate right away and gets things started for the team. And then Cyno was able to come in and look for his cleanup.
Beautiful play. It was really, really nice.
That's what they wanted.
Also taking into account is Andy with Blink as well in the mid lane. We've not touched on that yet, but that Blink was the initiation go time for him.
You know, I said he blinked in just now because it's what I saw.
Exactly.
And it was in my head, and then I said, I mean, that can't be right, actually.
Yeah, why is it
but
not
it's what he
Aegis?
has. That's exactly it.
But the exorcism after the fact, like Dardes uses beads and Aegis, and as soon as the Aegis wears off, andinster just goes, exercise all those demons, friend, goodbye. Yep. And as soon as Dardes falls, Renegades go, oh no, we're on the defensive now. Great play from Space Station. They get a Fury and the Fire Giant. It was an Oni Fury too, which means these lanes are going to naturally push. And I like the idea of Cherio now on this right-hand side to make sure he can keep them busy somewhere else at the same time.
This is the first time all day that Space Station have had a moment to be in control of the game. They're still not tremendously out in front. They're only up about 1,000, but this is where, if they play their cards right, they can build that lead.
Correct.
Look how much of their loss they've had to recoup. It's a 4,000 swing back in their favor. They got the tier 1 here and left, but where is it they'll go now? It looks like they want to stick around and try and get the tier 2 as well.
Yeah, I'm just not sure what they can do without Aquarius being around right now. Sure, Aquarius isn't going to be like the biggest factor, right, in these engagements in terms of like initiating a fight, so to speak. But
I mean, like him in that regard.
He can't just like walk up to a tower and ult and go, now run away or I'll keep doing damage. But I don't think Renegades would be really upset. At this level of play, the World Serpent is kind of easy to avoid for the most part, and if you do want to get the damage, you can put yourself in an awkward spot sometimes.
And I would like to say, even if they lose this game, Space Station, because I don't think that this is guaranteed in either direction, but this is finally the comp that Set wants to be in.
Oh, yeah.
This is the exact type of situation he wants, where you force everyone to spread out time and time again, to get away from the Yorm, to get away from the Zhong, to get away from this Horus, and then you can finally get these 1v1 isolated fights that Set's just going to win.
There's definitely a problem for Renegades on defense, in my opinion, in terms of clear potential.
Oh, sure.
Think about how Ul's going to have to step up the Rave to fire the arrow through. Freya needs to sit there and fire a couple of shots out. Sure, they cleared the wave quickly, but presenting yourself like that to the enemy gives them a window, and that's why it's going to be tricky if Space Station can hold this lead and start to stranglehold the game a little bit more now, as Renegades will just get slowly trapped in their base. And that's why we're seeing Renegades get aggressive instead. They're not going to sit on the tower line. They're going to try and pressure the waves out and keep Space Station pushing waves in rather than sat on the tower edge.
I just don't know that Space Station's done enough. They're finally grouping up here on the short side, short lane of the map, which I think is good, but all they've done are tier 1s. I like that Renegades have been willing to defend on the tier 2s. When the team first gets Fire Giant and it's even, you'd much rather the fight against a Fire Giant team than a team that's up an extra 5,000 from getting all your tier 2s. I kind of like that they're defending.
Well, the thing is, the Space Station not getting too aggressive is something that can cause you an issue. You're like, hey, we got Fire Giant. Hey, we won a big fight. Well, that just only made us even. Right?
That's all it did.
Let's not bite off more than we can chew. Let's just try and get a lead now without pushing our lead too far, making the mistakes of giving Renegades a window to get back into it.
A fight in the jungle, though, could be scary if I'm Renegades. This is right where Space Station would love to be, is to catch you with all these extra paths and to cut you off with the Horus ultimate and the Jormungandr ultimate. Falling back to the tier 2, I think, is the right call.
Just need a bit of setup this. You're looking for Yorm to throw the spits over the wall. Don't forget, he's got the Gem of Isolation, so it's going to consistently slow people in that area. So Space Station might wait for the minions and wait for the opportunity to set up a little bit more around the objective.
20 seconds and the FG's gone, the actual buff from it, so they won't have that much of a lead at that point.
That's a lot of
Rapper
damage.
goes in,
Lot of damage.
has transformed, but gets caught out.
Beautiful.
Great knock up there from BaRRaCCuDDa with a persistent gust. That's Nika's ultimate down as well,
Tier 2.
and that should give them the tier 2.
Yeah, I don't think Space Station will buy more than a tier 2 just
They
now.
can't, yeah.
I think Renegades are right to fall back in this scenario once Raptor goes down. If Space Station decide to go for a Phoenix here, it is a 4v5, but they lost the World Serpent, so a little less of a threat. More importantly, like you said, the Fire Giant being on cooldown right now around them, they should probably fall back and set up for the next Fire Giant engage.
I do think, though, that Renegades have played these the first 4 minutes of the Fire Giant buff, where they actually have the buff itself, about as well as you can. They showed some presence with the tier 2 in duo. They pushed into the jungle to slow down Space Station coming up on the map. They were ready on the tier 2 defend and only lost 1. That's not bad at all.
In the grand scheme of things, I think both teams played that Fire Giant well. That's what you're looking at. I think Space Station did the correct thing of just trying to get a lead that was comfortable without pressuring too far, and Renegades respectfully didn't take fights too long against a Fire Giant team and accepted casualties of war.
They knew that it would not have been good for him. I want to talk about Cyno's build, though. Yet again, this Jotuns on Kile combo for some extra cooldown. But look at this Frostbound that he's got to
Makes
give him
sense.
some of that extra slow, too. He's going to stick on whoever he catches.
And that's what you have to do in sticking, but also the incidental health will help him
It
out
does help, too.
Just to keep him alive a little
That's
bit
why he's doing that
longer.
over Hastened, I imagine.
Well,
right?
if you've got 300 health to survive, means Jeff can jump to you and heal you and give you protections again, so you can live even longer. But this is a risky Fire Giant fight right now.
It's at half HP, and I think Space Station are right to give up on this one. Raffer's able to reposition over the wall with the underhanded tactics, and Cyno slightly further away from the rest of the team, as he will want to be for the rest of this game. He's looking to kind of lean in at the fight on the back end.
One of the reasons Space Station are definitely playing this fight passive too is because of Jeff's relic situation.
Yep.
Shell's not available just yet, but more importantly, the Frenzy. You take a race at the Fire Giant with one Frenzy versus none, you're probably going to lose.
Even if they do both have them, only one's upgraded from what I can see too, which favors Renegades a bit.
That extra pen definitely does make a difference.
Space Station, though, still aren't ready to push in just yet, but look at this heal. It's not huge. This isn't like an Aphrodite or a Hell or anything like that, but it definitely adds up. I mean, 6,000 that Renegades can't match, that's not nothing, as JeffHindla wants to engage. So does Aqua. They want to catch them in these jungle corridors where they can spread them out. So Cyno come in the backside. It's exactly what they want. Aqua makes it up into the World Serpent Ultimate to keep the knockups on the backside. They've got the 2v2.
Cyno went in on Funballer, was looking for the backline, but didn't really find the target until he said he got chipped away at. Now it's andinster's turn, but the Ghosts are not doing enough damage. Funballer was the only member of Renegades that really got low, and everybody on Renegades is now turning around and bursting down Space Station.
Bishop, they just could not quite get enough. Renegades find the 2-for-0 advantage. And now they can surge, but no, they'll hold up. Funballer's a bit low. Raffer doesn't have much by way of mana. He'll be detransforming right now. Instead, they're going to come back towards the FG.
I think it was just too fast from Space Station. The ult from Aquarius and the ult from Jeff were fantastic. I think the fact they continued to chase after getting Funballer's ult was probably where they should have stopped. If they would have just fallen back then and go, hey, we got the relics and the ultimate out of Funballer, now we can fall back and
They've got
take
some
another
steal
fight.
potential here, though, with these Sand Clones with Aqua nearby. Aqua moves in, but they give up. They stop DPSing and just burn down the Jormungandr. Now they can go back to it, but Cyno's still here. BaRRaCCuDDa is around as well, but he ends up falling. But Raffer ends up falling to Aquarius because they had to hold the FG. All the while, Cyno patiently waiting. But what a banish, though, from Funball.
Yeah, the ward just gave away the game, and now Cyno under pressure will be able to jump to a clone. But incidentally, all he can really do is farm and run as fast as his little legs can take him, and just try and buy time at this moment.
Yeah, he's dead, though. He ends up even using this Kingslayer ultimate to try and get himself further away, but does not work. This is starting to feel real rough for Space Station, though. I don't think they could afford to lose that fight and give up this FG. You can see it in the graphs.
Yeah.
It's all come careening back down towards Renegades.
It's been a game, Finch. It really has. And it's been enjoyable to watch as well, because this is very indicative of what Smite's all about. It's not normally who plays better. It's actually who makes the mistake and gets punished heavier for it. Renegades had the early game in certain ways, but got punished, and then SSG get a Fire Giant. Then it's turnaround time, and Space Station Gaming make a mistake, and Renegades punish them, and they're in the driving seat now.
And they are so reliant on how well Cyno can do in a team fight. And I don't even mean that Cyno needs to do, like, 4K a fight or something like that in terms of damage. He just needs to find either Dardes or Funballer on their own and win that 1v1. And at last fight, he wasn't able to get to really either one. I think he picked Funball and just got blown up.
He got into the fray, but the problem is that there was multiple people around him that
They weren't spread like they
extra
wanted.
help.
Yeah.
And they'd already used a lot of their frontline engage for Space Station to set that up in the first place. I really do think what they did to Freya, though, in terms of Force of Ultimate and a Relics was good enough.
Right.
And that cost them a World Serpent and the Horus Ultimate. Outside of that, fall back again. Because next time they come to the Fire Giant pit to try and contest, you bait it out, and then you've got andinster and Cyno to maybe blink on in and go all in on the Freya. It's definitely a different state of affairs than chasing them into the mid lane, which was, at the end of the day, very impactful in Renegade's favor.
I know you said you didn't like how well Renegades could defend without that sort of mage range clear to help them out, but what about on the side here for Space Station as they set up?
A little bit of Yorm help, that's the main thing here. It'll slow the minions down and do a lot of damage to them as they come through. As you can see, it'll kill them quite heavily, so it means that Raffer will have to tank up a little bit more. The good news from Renegades, though, they have a front line that's pretty good at juggling the aggro in Fafnir, in Naja, and in Nika.
Cheerio goes right past the mid-Phoenix to blink onto Andinster, but it just does not work. Frenzy now popped by Renegades, but that felt more defensive than anything. They're not going to have it for the burn.
And Finch, you mentioned about the defense. That's why you see Renegades starting to split the difference, trying to send Cheerio in at the same time. But this left on Phoenix is being looked at. Raffer's getting low. Got to be careful.
BaRRaCCuDDa got some nice autos on Funballer. I think that's why he felt he had to ult there to get away from JeffHindla. So far, Space Station actually winning the trade. They've got their ults, the blinks for the most part, to try and defend. It's just the beads on Andy they're missing.
Main thing from Space Station's point of view is, can they force the beads or Aegis maybe out of Dardes, I guess, is the prime target here. Mainly Dardes because he's the physical damage dealer. Also got the penetration online to whittle down these Phoenixes a little bit more so than a Freya. So if they can find Dardes, that's great, but they've got to be careful about getting picked.
This might be a bait, and JeffHindla is the one on the hook. He makes it back into the Phoenix, and Renegades cannot quite lock them down. I like the idea, though.
Did cost him his shell, though, and that's kind of important in a weird way, just because of the fact that's not going to be available to keep some of his teammates alive. It's upgraded as well, so it would have blocked a couple of these auto attacks. Don't forget, Freya's range will get classed as that too.
Freya is very potent. So we'll see what they can do to try and mitigate her. So Pyromancer goes down in favor of Renegades. Not the biggest deal in the world past the 30-minute mark. It does give you the chance to get back into the fight a little bit sooner, but that's just one of those things you take.
Oh, Finch, I wish this was game one, man. Like, if this would have been game one, we would have been in for a right old series today, because this is what I expected both these teams to come out like. But Renegades just came out of the gate a lot quicker. They had their game plan, and they got themselves into the driving seat already, where this game is a little bit tricky for Space Station, because even if they win this game, what do they do in game 4? They're going to have to... the Renegades know that's the game plan now, so they can adjust once more.
This is modus operandi, though, for Space Station. This is how they do things. They seem to struggle in the picks and bans early on in the sets, and then they kind of they catch back up, and they're like, okay, here's what we need to make sure we're actually paying some respect to, what we want to value ourselves, and then they look much better. But they kind of end up giving away a game or two in almost every set they play because it takes them a while.
Does feel like with this composition they've drafted, though, they've got an identity as a team, though. Everyone's kind of in a natural position for me in terms of what they're playing and what their job is in these fights. Especially when you got someone like andinster, who's been a majority jungler through his career and flirted with the mid lane at times. He's got a jungle mentality, which means he's not scared of dying to set up for his team.
Not afraid to blink in whatsoever, though. Renegades have been a bit stalled in this push. FG spawning in under 20 seconds, which should force Space Station a little bit further out to try and defend. Both of these teams have shown decent potential to defend on their structures, so I'm thinking this might come down to who can win the fight out here in the jungle by a wider margin.
I really do think it's a fire giant fight. Now, this objective is absolutely critical for both. The gold lead at the moment is still impactful because Renegades have more completed items overall. You can just see on the left-hand side of Space Station's item list, there's a couple of people trying to finish off their final item at the moment. So the gold still matters, but this fight is still relatively even, Finch. I'm not fully sold that Renegades get this one for free at all.
I don't think so either. I think that Space can absolutely be here for the fight. They're down some gold, about 6,000 or so. That's not nothing. It's certainly still relevant as no one's completely full build and sold off boots and stuff like that and fully upgraded relics. But it doesn't mean as much as it once did. As Cyno picks up the red buff, he definitely wants to do some damage.
Yeah, because speed buff as the game goes on does kind of become a little bit more lackluster.
You're clearing camps less.
You can try and give it over to maybe a support or someone like that, or another teammate that could use that mobility a little bit better than you as time goes on. I said support in this case because Horus can make some good use of it. But so can a Zhong, you know? The extra mobility to get around in these engagements will make an impact.
I like the idea of giving it to BaRRa as well, allowing him to reposition himself, so it all makes sense.
Oh, he doesn't need,
it looks like they're not fighting
does
yet.
BaRRa really need more mobility?
You're talking about how good airstrike is, right? And
I'm
I'm trying to think of a reason to talk about how it's not that good, and it is very good. It's good, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'll come down on that side.
On the money. This could be drawn out a while now because I don't think either team feels really confident around the Fire Giant. I think if anything what you may end up seeing is Renegades will start it up because they've got wave pressure on that left-hand side now. And that's a question that's been asked of Space Station is, do we defend left-hand side eventually when these minions push down? Or do we just try and defend the Fire Giant?
We are starting to see a little bit more of this set poke, though. And that's something we haven't gotten to talk much about. Is JeffHindla is under some duress on the right-hand side. You're wondering when things could start. It can definitely start like that if JeffHindla takes a bunch of free poke. That might embolden Renegades a little bit more.
Jeff is a little bit far forward there, I'm going to say that for sure. Like, he's got the defensive capabilities to jump over walls and back to teammates. But as long as they're not doing Fire Giant and you're not trying to place a ward, I think you're fine to not have to be in that position. I got the idea of trying to flank around the back. But incidentally, I mentioned minion waves moments ago, and Renegade's doing a good job of just keeping the pressure in the lanes pretty much across the map, and that's presenting them with that tier 2.
Nika was in that 1v1 with Cyno just now, and I think he was trying to use the silence to take the Magai's cloak, but couldn't get it. But this is all in for Renegades. They've used the Frenzy, which means they do want to grab the objective here, or at least force their hand. But Dardes the target way in the back line. Cyno and Aqua blow him up on the back line. Horus ultimate too, which means it's time for the full-on dive. But instead, they're going to stay back near the FG.
Yeah, I don't want a full-on dive, Finch. Don't tell them that. That's what Space Station do too much.
They should do it, I think.
They should go towards the Fire Giant and bait him in again.
No, now they're taking all this extra damage from the objective. I'd be worried if I was on the side of it. This is what you want. Catch him in the choke point as in goes Space Station.
But what can they do after the fact? As soon as Nika's ult comes through, it delays Space Station once more. It is another ultimate, well, at least one ultimate used by Renegades, as Wrath is now consumed as well. Take into account, Space Station still have their Frenzy. They've got 30 seconds still before the respawn of Dardes.
They still have Andy's ult as well. 3-man knockup. That closes in the distance. Work there from Aqua to set up for the rest of the team. Funballer goes down. Nika blocked it as well. A double for BaRRaCCuDDa as he shows what the Jing can do. Raffer limited on options to run away as well. Space Station finally break open the game a bit as they should be able to get the EFG.
And look at the call from Space Station here. Cyno on the chase to keep Raffer away. Rest of the team to the Fire Giant use all the damage. Love the play overall. Cyno, full credit to him. The wrap around the back behind the Harpies. You saw it. We could all see it on the screen. Renegades didn't know. And as soon as they commit to the Fire Giant, Aquarius and Cyno together made that a work of art. And because of it, Space Station are in the driving seat.
Finally now, they're the ones with the enhanced Fire Giant and can start to push. They still have some tier 2s to worry about, though, that could potentially make a Titan kill harder if they don't go get those, so that's why we see them here in mid, clearing this up. There's even a wave pushed up to the left. They'll have to do that work first.
I do think we might be in a situation now where Space Station, when it comes to Phoenix Station, if they don't get the Phoenix on this one siege here, they should look to split the difference, but I think they may commit.
It looks like they have. They've already used the ultimate from Horus. BaRRaCCuDDa has been able to chunk the Phoenix. It has fallen.
That's huge.
And now Space Station disengaged. It's our first one of the game that's actually come down, the first Phoenix.
Yeah, taking into account, I mean, it's the third Fire Giant, right? Renegades were on the Phoenix line at one point, but just didn't have the opportunity to bring it down. The chase out of the base is a bit awkward. Andinster's pathing has got him in a bit of trouble here. I don't know if Space Station should take a fight. Maybe they will.
Frenzy available, though, again for Renegades. Funballer finds andinster very early on. Cheerio has found himself a target, too, and this could potentially be disaster for Space Station after such a beautiful fight.
Are you kidding me?
Aqua's disengaging on the right, but who's going to help Jeff?
I mean, he's going to have to try to help himself, right? And, they always do it! I'm so frustrated, bitch!
You are chat right now.
Everything right, and then right at the tail end, they just go different paths in the jungle. Yes! Wow. Yes, they lose off this. Wow. Yes, I'm frustrated about it. No, I'm not an SSG fanboy. I'm just a good SMITE fanboy, and it's frustrating to see this happen again.
Poor Space Station, man. It feels like this always
this game, bitch!
is how things go. Renegades, though, with a great call to push outside of the Phoenix and chase them down, isolate andinster, and get that crucial pick. They still have Aqua and Cyno here to try and defend as Renegades, 5 members strong, barrel into the Titan room, but they're not in the Titan yet. They're looking for the picks first. Cyno goes down. Now it's just Aqua. Titan down to half HP. Renegades with a chance with the deicide to clinch their ticket to the mid-season invitational and take down SSG.
No one's blind, Finch, and everyone saw what happened as they pushed.
Some people are.
Listen, no one's blind at home. They saw what happened in that play.
There's some people who are.
The pathing there was absolutely awkward from SSG. They split themselves apart in the jungle, and you're running away from a Renegades team that's on respawn, have an Amaterasu with them as well, so they're gonna have that mobility, a Naja for gap closing, a ring toss for slowing them down, all those things, and they get caught out in the jungle on the escape. Can't happen, man.
It's definitely frustrating if you're Space Station. That's the end of their chances to make it to the mid-season invitational. But I think we're clearly seeing some light at the end of the tunnel for this roster and what they can end up eventually looking like with Cyno here on this team. I hope they stick as they're currently constituted and keep doing some work. Get those picks and bans in order so they don't come in at that one-game deficit so often, and then they can probably start making some noise.
I'm so frustrated, and it's not because they're a terrible place. It's just it was a bad mistake to make, and you just see it over again. We talked about rubber the green of the luck. Well, sometimes it's luck, but sometimes it's also a bit of the other way where you don't make those mistakes. You know?
People get it the wrong way. They know you write the script, but you don't write down exactly what happens.
Not word for word.
So now you know. Now, and when you see it happens this way, it's frustrating for you a little bit.
My year now.
Space Station are right there, man. Time and time again. They just need a little bit more, it feels like, to finally be able to get over that hump. But all credit to Renegades for how well they played.
I will say, though, what Finch is saying there is completely true. The light at the end of the tunnel for Space Station is there. They just need to get out the frickin' tunnel!
Can they make it out of there? Let's find out. Maybe the desk has some different ideas.
Might have some different ideas. All right, fine. Tried to get the better
How dare
pen.
you?
I was hoping you wouldn't notice.
I noticed.
Well,
everybody notices the difference between a gel pen that works the second you touch it to the paper and that, whatever that is.
That's what I said about the drafts from Space Station Gaming this time around. Freya Kronos get through 2 games, and the third one, well, just Freya, but still just Freya. Renegades to go to town, man. 3-0, great performance. And people are going to talk a lot about Space Station, mishandling the draft, and that's absolutely a thing. But also, the Renegades played out of their minds.
I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt and say that Space Station had crafted a plan that was intended to deal with the Freya Kronos responses from Renegades in that early drafting phase, but unfortunately it just didn't really seem to pan out too well for them today, and that is true. The one thing I definitely don't want to do here is take away from the Renegades' performance. While I definitely think that Space Station had their own fair share of woes and misplays, I definitely think that Renegades being able to capitalize and punish them every single time for that. It speaks a lot about their performance.
Space Station are a stand-up middle-of-the-pack team, which is what I think we can say about Renegades right now. Both of them kind of trying to make that stride from middle-of-the-pack to, the bottom of the top, so to speak. And Renegades today played like a team that's doing just that for sure.
I guess what really hurts me, though, is that Game 3 was the first game that I feel like from this set we actually got a little bit of showing as to what Space Station was really capable of.
I agree.
I definitely think that in games 1 and 2, while Space Station might have had plans formulated, like I said, I just don't think that it was worth the risk that they undertook. And the fact that it put them at a 2-0 deficit so early on, I mean, any team is going to struggle with trying to make a comeback in that type of situation. I think we've only really seen E United pull it off.
Yep, Yeah, that is very true.
Recently, that is. I want to point out the recently.
You're very true there. I'm just looking. BaRRaCCuDDa has a positive slash line. Good job for him. Interesting build, mixing the crit and the chins. Not always my favorite, but things are changing. We'll see if that's a thought process.
It was kind of a necessity here, I think, against the Amaterasu and the Fafnir. It's not that chins with crit is awful. It's just that it's not ideal. But it can definitely still be viable and have its place. I think BaRRa was definitely getting a lot of utility out of his itemization choices. But Game 3, I memean, Renegades still... or Space Station, I should clarify, still made Renegades work for it.
Exactly, and that's the biggest thing. BaRRaCCuDDa coming through, what was it, 6-3, I believe, positive, and some assists to boot. So the Game 3 is what we're looking at here as Space Station gaming fans for sure, but Renegades came through on the top, and again, just Rafford doing his job here, looking real strong as support. Got to shout out Cheryl the Naja as well. Top farm on that Naja in the jungle. We saw him set up along Shen. We saw him set up man game number 2, and then the non-shot comes through and is able to be the carry there. Fun stuff from Renegades for sure. We've got Chero and Funball post game. What's up, guys?
It is indeed Cheerio and Funball are here, jungler and hunter for Renegades. First off, congratulations. How much does it mean for you all and for your team to know that you are finally qualified, you're clinched to be able to go to the mid-season invitational?
Finally relieved to actually qualify, since we really had a good start 3-0 and then suddenly we were losing every game and had doubts about making it, but glad we finally made it. Now we have time to prepare for MSI and practice.
Well, actually a little bit more about those doubts, because obviously, the start of the year, 3 games in a row, you win, big win over Dignitas, you hadn't been defeated. Was that a hard turning point for you guys? Did you realize where your issues were in terms of why you were struggling and not finding the wins that you expected?
Yeah, I mean, we know what the problem was. It was just that our scrims were just so clogged up together. It was really hard for us to, try and get back on our feet. And I think that, brought in a factor as to why we lost. But we also misplayed most of our games.
Well, talk to me a little bit about playing up against the set here in this game. I mean, because we don't see a lot of them, and Cyno goes to it twice in this game. It looks like he was just trying to dive either you or Dada on repeat. What was it like playing up against it, I guess, and how do you value it?
I mean, I didn't really care. I'm going to be honest. Like when I think he played it game 1, and I just didn't feel like he had any presence in the game. Even the last game, honestly, he made one good play, and that's it. He should have stuck to Najar or something. Yeah.
How can you do that when your man next to you is taking it away from him?
You should have played like Cabra.
From your point of view, the most interesting thing I want to bring up is how it's felt to play with your team consistently week in, week out in the studio, because it's been a big change.
It feels kind of weird because we sadly didn't get to play most of the sets, honestly. When we lost, we got stomped on except United, so we never really had a chance. I feel like the teams were just ahead of us and they knew what they want to do and they just did it. It felt like they were playing against a lesser team where usually we'd have even ground, so we didn't really get to play the game. We were just honestly getting stomped, so hopefully now we catch up to the other teams and hopefully it's more fun. So far it hasn't been fun, the sets. Other than the Dig set, haven't been fun really.
Well, Funball, are you going to complain if you keep getting Freya 3 games in a row from now on? I mean, it seems like you had a pretty good set playing it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've been playing Freya since she came out and all that, so I don't know. Whatever.
He'll take it, I guess, if it's open for him. Again, congratulations, you guys. Very well earned. I'm looking forward to seeing it at the Mid-Season Invitational. We still have another set, though, so after this break, we'll be right back.
Thank you.